Okay. All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the Howell Township Council's workshop agenda meeting of September the 9th. The time is approximately 6:45. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the opening statement and call the roll?
Let the minutes reflect that adequate notice of the holding of this workshop meeting of Howell Township Council was provided for in the following manner. By the posting of copy of said notice upon the bulletin board in the Township Municipal Building on December 28, 2007. By the faxing of a copy of said notice to the Asbury Park Press, Tri-Town News and Star Ledger for publication on December 28, 2007. By the filing of a copy of said form and notice in the Township Clerk's office on December 28, 2007. The public will be allowed to attend and will be allowed to participate pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law. The public is reminded that civility and decorum will be maintained during the meeting. Any contracts awarded at this meeting or between now and the next meeting will be required to comply with the requirements of Public Law 1975, Chapter 127. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code, be advised that this facility is designed with 3 emergency exits for your safety. The locations are as follows. Upon exiting the meeting room, to the rear there, to immediate left and immediate right, and at the front of the meeting at the left of the dais. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. Roll call, Mrs. Dalton. Here. Mr. Howell.
Here.
Mrs. Showmaker.
She's not presently here.
Mr. Walsh.
Here.
Mayor DeBella.
Here. Okay, Mrs. Schlegel, I understand we have reason to go into executive session. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Contract negotiations, which is insurance broker, co-or planner, co-or attorney. Investigations, violations, or possible violations of law, which is investigation involving use of public funds.
I'd also like to add to that potential litigation, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Litigation.
Okay. All right, Ms. Woolman, would you please read the necessary statement for executive?
Whereas Title 10, Chapter 4, Section 13 of the New Jersey Revised Statutes require that the public shall not be excluded from any meetings of a public body unless a resolution authorizing such exclusion is adopted at a public meeting, whereas the Township Council of the Township of Howell has determined that such a closed meeting is required to discuss certain matters which are exempted from consideration with the public in attendance under New Jersey Revised Statutes 10:4-12. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Council of the Township of Howell that the public shall be excluded from the next portion of this meeting, and that the Township Council will reconvene in public session thereafter. Be it further resolved that minutes will be kept of the meeting in closed session, and the time and the circumstances under which the discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public cannot be determined at this time.
We need a motion and a second, please.
So moved, Mayor. Second, Mayor.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Okay, for the benefit of the public, we expect to come back into regular session at approximately 7:30. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if I can have your attention, please, I'm going to reconvene this meeting to order. Let the record reflect this is the September 9th meeting of the Howell Township Governing Body. It is approximately 8 p.m. We have already had our appropriate opening statements and roll call. I would ask that everyone please rise for a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd ask for your indulgence for a moment, as always. I do have an announcement to make this evening. It is with deep regret that I announce that Freewood Acres Fire Company, longtime active life member, former Chief Donald Donahue, has passed away. Chief Donahue, current president of the company, he was a former chief of the company, served almost an entire lifetime, 40 years of service to the Freewood Acres Fire Service. I'm going to announce the viewing. The viewings are at the Lakewood Funeral Parlor on Wednesday, September the 10th from 2 to 4 and 7 to 9. Thursday, September 11th, 2 to 4 and 7 to 9. And the actual funeral service itself is Friday, September the 12th at St. Veronica's Church at 10:30. I would ask that everyone please keep the Donahue family in your thoughts and in your prayers. The Donahue family has a very significant history in our community. The entire family does wonderful things for Howell Township, and we really are going to miss former Chief Donahue. So I ask the entire community to keep the Donahue family in your prayers. And as always, I would ask for a moment of silent observation in thought of the many troops that defend this country all over the world. Thank you. All right, Mrs. Schlegel, we have reports of officials. You go first. What do you have for us?
Mayor, I
Nothing to report? Okay. Anything else from any of the professionals? Okay. Mrs. Dalton, would you like to go first?
Sure. I know that probably others are going to speak about some other important people whom we've lost in the township this week, so I'll leave that to those who were closer. Mrs. Schlegel, I got an email, and I think the council all got a letter from a family on Anthony Way with respect to farmland buffers. I'm not sure if you saw that. You probably did. Concerning property that is no longer a farm, and why are they having difficulties with respect to a well that was put in, which evidently was in the farmland buffer, which they're being asked to remove, which now appears the farmland buffer, at least as I read the ordinance, should not be there any longer, since the property behind them is no longer an active farm. I think we've talked about this before. What happens when property is no longer actively engaged in farming. When I read our ordinance on farmland buffers, it says basically that there's got to be farming activity there. So I would like to see us do something for that family as well as all the others who are affected by that. What are we doing to let people know that they can use their land and that restriction is no longer there?
Well, I believe what has to happen, and probably Mr. Nunziato could help me out on this, but I believe in order to vacate that buffer, that has to be done by the council, if I'm not mistaken.
Oftentimes that property has to do something with the map when the maps are changed, correct, Bill?
What has been explained to us in the past is the farmland buffer, if it's a separate buffer, sometimes on the maps it's 1 or 2 or 3 different types of buffers: conservation easement, perimeter buffer, farmland buffer. And in some cases the farmland goes away, but there's also other buffers. But more to Ms. Schlegel's comment, any type of buffer that is going to be vacated has to be done via the council, yes.
So consequently, then I will look at that and have the engineering department go over that, and we'll come back to the council with the findings.
Okay.
I'd also gotten an email, I think everyone else did, with respect to someone alerting us to the fact that we had an ordinance listing several properties that we were going, can you take that off? Going to sell, that evidently are our green acres and
That's been
drainage
taken
ditches.
off.
Okay.
We give you credit, Mrs. Schlegel, but you can't sell somebody else's property.
No, it wasn't, so it was our property, but it was
our
property
green
we
acres.
shouldn't have
couldn't
been
sell.
selling. Okay, that's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Dalton. Mrs. Showmaker?
Just one quick question that I'd like us to find out. The property over by Bear Swamp, was there property donated to the township from Mr. Blewett over there that helped connect a piece of property?
Yes, there was.
And if so, I know that they're working on paths and names and things. I thought perhaps that area where it butts up to his property, we may want to name that particular path after the Blewetts. Because I can tell you, as long as I've said to, there's not many residents that have donated property to the township, and I think it would be nice to do that. I just don't know the intricacies of that.
All right, so your recommendation would be for the council to consider formally naming that property.
Well, that area there, I know they're
The area.
considering putting paths
Right,
on there and naming the paths specifically.
we can certainly look at that. What I'll do is let me get a map of the area so you can see where the paths go and then where that piece that Blewett has donated. What the purpose was to make a greenway, and we needed that piece. So why don't we get you a design from the engineering department, or a map at least, so we can look at it.
Great. That's it.
That's all, Mrs. Schlegel? Okay. Mr. Walsh, anything? Councilman?
Yes, a few things, if I could indulge you, Mayor. We have a report here that came from CME Associates, our engineers. And I just wonder if some copies could be made. It's about different projects in Howell Township and what phases they're in and what's going on with them. If some copies could be made and left up front in case any of the citizens would like to see them.
Certainly. What's the date on that?
This date was August 13, 2008.
I believe I received an updated one today. They're monthly reports that we're receiving from, just to let you know, Councilman, we're receiving monthly reports from CME on all those projects. So I did receive one through email today.
If possible, can we leave some copies up front for some of the residents? If they
We'll
can-
have them for the next meeting.
Thank you very much. I also received a report from you from Mr. Filiaccio about the open space tax, and I would like permission to meet with him for 5-10 minutes one day just to go over it. I had some questions I wanted to ask him.
Certainly.
Thank you. I received in the mail a letter from a gentleman, and it started out, I wanted to read this, as many complaints as we get. It started out, it said, "Unbelievable," is the only word to describe the paving, the Earl Paving Company did on Four Plains Road in July. The entire project was done very organized, expeditiously. Even the staff controlling traffic throughout the day were very polite to me and my family. Most importantly, the road was paved seamlessly. It's very difficult to find companies to work at this level of professionalism. It's great to know we have such a great company in our community. Thank you again, and please be sure the management of Earl Paving Company is recognized for their great work. That was from one of our residents. I read it like 10 times at home. I read enough bad ones, so I wanted to read a good one over and over again to give me one of those soft, queasy
Balance in the
feelings.
scales, Mr. Walsh.
That's it. I did attend the meeting that we had here in the township about our affordable housing obligations, and we will be having some public meetings in late October, November. Is that correct, Ms. Slagle?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I believe it's at the planning board level.
Is at the planning board level that
Yes.
they'll be announced, that we're going to be having 2 or 3 open public meetings, special meetings to
Yes.
discuss in the public?
Have we formed that group?
Excuse me?
Have we formed that group?
Yes, we had a meeting, about 3 weeks ago?
That's correct.
Members of the planning board, members of the council, different professionals from the township, and in the manager's office, and we will be having public meetings before we have to come up with a color plan, which I believe we have to have in by the end of the year to the state.
December 31st.
December, is that the end of the year?
That is.
Every year it is. As far as shared services, I did attend a meeting in Marlboro from different municipalities about shared services in August. And from reading some other things also from Ms. Schlegel about shared services, a memorandum for our Fire Bureau Chief, Mr. Hotmar, and reading some articles in the paper about Farmingdale. I would like to know if it would be a possibility for us to have an open forum here for some different things with department heads about doing some shared services and inviting a couple other towns that are nearby. Because it seems like we all have some agendas that we could help each other and save taxpayers money, but it just seems like everyone's not on the same page. Is that a possibility for us to do?
Of course, with the direction of the council, we certainly could. And I'd just like to mention that I had a meeting today with, another meeting with Farmingdale today regarding shared services, and this meeting was very productive, actually. There were a lot of good suggestions that came out of the meeting. We're just going back and looking at some numbers and making sure that, that things are pretty equal, and looks like we're going to move forward in doing some of those things.
Okay, I'll be going back to Marlboro again next week. There was about 11 municipalities represented, as well as freeholders Clifton and Barry, and some other people from the state, different departments from the county. It was a very productive meeting. There'll be another one next week. I'll be attending, and I'll bring back information to the council and to the people, okay? One last thing on a sad note. Last week, I attended services for a man who I consider one of the pillars of Howell Township, G.J. Andreev. He was one of the leaders of the comic community, been here for many years, was very instrumental in a lot of the positive things that have gone on in Howell Township over the last 40 years. 2 months ago, I had the pleasure, along with Deputy Mayor Howell and Councilwoman Dalton, Manager Ms. Schlegel, and the Chief, of going down to Philadelphia, meeting the Dalai Lama with him. We had a private audience, and he's a very well-respected man, had a lot of knowledge. I mean, speaking to him, I like talking. With him, I'd speak for 30 seconds, and I would listen for 9.5 minutes. Because it seemed like I got a lot more out of listening to him than I did talking to him. It's a sad loss. Speaking with his daughter, Sarah, I mean, thinking of my life, I told her, I said, how lucky you are to have a father like that your whole life. God sure shined on them. He shined on Howell Township when that man came here and took roots and has done the things he's done in Howell Township. What he's done is it's such a list. And he will be sorely missed also with Chief Donahue and his family. And just my prayers out to their family. And, you know, one of the joys of my life, coming to Howell Township, 14 years old, was meeting a man like him and getting to spend some time with him. That's all for me, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Deputy Mayor, under reports.
Yeah, Mayor, I just have a couple of things. A few weeks back, the township lost a building on the Price property. There was a fire in the middle of the night. I happened to be on duty for the first aid squad. Southern Fire Department responded to Adelphia. Freewood Acres did backup for Southern. Ramtown was there. Howell First Aid. But what I'd really like to do, I'd like to thank the folks at the Wawa on Route 9 and Kent Road and the Wawa on White Street on Route 9. At 4 o'clock in the morning, Ron Sanizak got in his truck and went to the Wawa on Route 9 and begged coffee and donuts from them for the firefighters who had been on the scene for about 4 hours at that point in time. And I went down to the other Wawa and begged 4 dozen breakfast sandwiches. And they couldn't be more helpful. We've never seen a bill from them. They just said, we work here, we live here, here.
Slap.
So I just wanted to say thank you to them. Going back on what Councilman Walsh was talking about with the shared services and you having the meeting today with Farmingdale, I can't recall if I had mentioned to you about returning from a call one day and seeing Farmingdale's fire truck filling up at the gas station on Main Street. And I'm wondering if that's a shared service where they could, you know, was that something that was brought up today? Because I'm sure we could probably sell them diesel.
Yes, it was. That actually was one of the items, was the gas, because their fire department is filling up at a regular gas station. I also wanted to mention that I met with representative from the fire commissioners for Howell Township.
Right.
And we're working with the fire departments to see if there's some shared services also that we can help provide to save money for the residents, so.
Okay. One of the other things, Mayor, was, I don't know how many phone calls you got, but I got a bunch of phone calls about this 178-year-old historic Dutch house that the Howell Zoning Board said had to be knocked down.
Just a few calls.
Yeah, I received a few. I reached out to Michelle Gladden because it appeared not once, not twice, but 3 times. So if Michelle's here this evening, I'd like to give her one of these Chamber of Commerce maps from Howell Township that shows you where the streets are and that street is not part of Howell Township. I spoke to her editor, actually called me yesterday, and we had a pretty good chat, and I told him, well, we'll keep her for now. So this map will be here for you, Michelle. And then one other thing that kind of bothers me. I got a phone call from Mrs. Schlegel about 2 weeks ago at 9 o'clock in the morning. I guess it was on a Friday. Or 8:45, that someone had called the township manager's office to complain that my daughter was driving around in a township vehicle. Now, you know what, folks? If you're angry at me about something, that's one thing. Leave my family the hell out of it. I'm not playing with you. When Mrs. Schlegel called me, I said, well, I can tell you what. I walked out the door 20 minutes ago, and Jen was sleeping. I called the house. Jen was still sleeping. The 3 people that were in the first responder vehicle for Howell Farmingdale First Aid were on duty. Now, one of them looks like my kid. So whatever your reason was for making that phone call, I hope it was your last one. That's all I got, man.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just have a few things. I want to report, Council also received this. I'd like to acknowledge Boy Scout Troop 156. Back in the end of July, that troop assisted our Clean Communities staff, collected 62 large garbage bags worth of debris inside one of the basins in our community. And I just really wanted to thank and publicly recognize Troop 156. And in fact, Mrs. Schlegel, I'd like to ask your office to get in contact with the leader of the troop and have the scouts come in for public recognition. We did get phone calls from several residents, and really their efforts really need to be further recognized. There is another issue that I wanted just to get clarification on, Mrs. Schlegel. This comes really from Mr. Davis's office, but in our packet was a notice regarding a hearing to be held on October 21st to evaluate the application of Cablevision for the renewal of their municipal license, et cetera, et cetera. Can you give us a little further detail on the total content of this hearing? Is this for them to reapply for the refranchising?
Yeah, this is something that our MIS department and Mr. Savino from our engineering department handle. It is for the, Bill, do you know for sure what it is? Is it the?
I know the franchise
It's the
agreement is due
franchise,
expiration.
yeah, it's the renewal of the franchise.
With viewing.
Okay. I mean,
And this is what we're required to do.
okay. What
These
I'd
are
like
posted
to-
on our website just for,
Sure.
for you to know.
I'd like to mention to the whole council, we have and continue to receive a number of complaints from residents that they don't have access to certain channels. I know the Villages doesn't have access to Channel 77. There are folks who live in Asbury Avenue who actually get Wall Township's channels. There have been some service issues and concerns, and I want to make sure that we've done the right amount of public outreach, other than just the notice of a hearing, that we've done the right amount of public outreach so that we can appropriately collect all the feedback possible from the community about problems before we give them another. My recollection is these might be 10-year franchising agreements. I could be mistaken, but they're not short-term agreements. And so I want to make sure that we've collected enough information before we just grant them and I'm not suggesting that we're not going to, but how do we go about getting more community input on this?
Well, it's been in the newspaper, it'll be in the newspaper again. It's on the website.
And you announced it.
And I announced it here, so.
Yeah, I mean, if there's
Okay.
something else that you have a recommendation, we'll
Well,
certainly take it.
I'd like us to put something on our website, maybe something more prominent, that just encourages residents to send us feedback about issues with Cablevision, because sometimes these advertisements in the newspaper get lost with all these other public advertisements. People don't even know where the heck to find them, and I don't want this one to get lost.
No,
Walsh,
absolutely.
right ahead.
I want one thing now. I want to be assured that Mrs. Dixon, if the Villages gets Channel 77, that you won't stay home, that you'll still be here.
I just want to clarify for the record, though, that Cablevision is not in the Villages.
Right.
Cablevision does not service the Villages.
Okay.
I thought you had Granville Cable.
All right, well, let's,
Okay.
hold on.
Well, right now, they're
All the
not.
more reason why we need good
Right.
public input. So we'll put something on the website.
We certainly will.
All right, I had a couple of other.
Mr. Mayor, just for the record, my last correspondence for the cable was August 26th, and as of then, they had not confirmed that 21st date yet.
They had not confirmed.
They had not confirmed that they would meet on the 21st.
Oh, we have there's a printed advertisement here from Mr. Davis's office to be published in the newspaper that the meeting is set. So we might want to just double check that. The other two things I wanted to mention, as I kind of wind down my time here, I get more and more annoyed by the continuing pattern of things that I see that are happening at the state level that have an impact on Howell. So I'm reading the Star-Ledger not too long ago, and I know that our state is in pretty difficult financial condition, and I read where the Corzine administration has approved $153 million in quote-unquote distressed aid to Union City, Camden, Patterson, Asbury Park, and Bridgeton, and Jersey City. Just a message to the governor, we're distressed here too, and I'm pretty fed up. It gets better. It goes on to say that the cost of divvying out, you won't even believe this, the cost to divvy out the $153 million, we're going to get a bill. It's going to cost $4.5 million for the Department of Community Affairs to actually distribute the money. And in fact, there's a quote from the Commissioner of the Community Affairs Division that actually says that it takes time and money to process these applications. So of the $153 million, 4.5 of it is just processing fees. So if people in this state and in our community aren't fed up enough, this is all the more reason. I found this to be totally outrageous. It was on page 17 in a section buried way in the back of the newspaper, which was even more discouraging. But people want to understand why their property taxes are so high This, to me, is an insult, and it's an insult to every Howell Township resident.
It was with the Cablevision ad, Mayor.
What's that?
It was with the Cablevision
The
ad.
Cablevision ad. And then the only other comment I want to make, I feel compelled because we are the district that pays the greatest amount of the tax levy for the Freehold Regional School District. I have great respect for Jim Wasser. I think he's a fine superintendent. I went on record saying this publicly, and I want to say it again here. I think Mr. Wasser needs to refund the district the dollars that he received by way of an increase in salary for a degree that he apparently received, whether he knew it or not is now irrelevant, for a degree he received that is invalid. We pay an awful lot of taxes to both our local and our regional school district, and we expect the people that run those businesses to have a greater responsibility. A, to do the right amount of due diligence about where they're going to go to school, and B, just in general, to understand the implications of their behaviors. And I find it very disturbing that this has gone on for as long as it has. I get emails and phone calls, as does everybody up here, every day from people in this community who can't pay their bills, they're going to lose their home, they can't put food on the table, and we have someone that got an increase in salary because they secured a diploma from a school that doesn't exist any longer and wasn't properly accredited. So I want to publicly appeal to Jim Wasser, with the greatest respect for him as a professional, to just end this nonsense and return the money, and anyone else in the district who was involved. This is a black eye on the district, which otherwise has a very stellar record and reputation. And I would encourage everyone from Howell Township to please call, write, or send an email to Mr. Wasser asking him to do the same. And that's all I have under reports.
Can I make a quick comment in respect to that statement? And we may have to appeal to our attorney, Mayor, if I can ask,
Please.
direct a question to him. Are there any state laws that in respect to that, where, for instance, there are people probably here in Howell Township that have their bachelor's or their master's, and I don't know if we give them merit towards that possibly have nothing to do with their position here. Perhaps we, if we can, as a local body, have some type of ordinance created on the books and pass that on to other municipalities, as well as enforce or encourage the school districts to pass some type of resolution in relation to the education, so that they do, because what they're doing is they're giving increases for masters and doctorate based on that, and there's no policy in place that says it has to be an accredited college.
I see what you're saying. Most of that is contractual and would be negotiated.
Correct.
At the time, but the language to be added would be that it
Correct.
Be from an accredited
Right.
university.
Because I'm sure that goes on in many facets of life, not only in the school district or the municipalities, but other that really have nothing to do with perhaps the position that they hold. So I don't know if there's anything at this point that we can do so that this doesn't become such a scorn, because we have a lot, Freehold Regional has a lot of respect in the community, and this just makes it look very poor.
Thank you, Mrs. Showmaker. Anything else under reports before we get into the agenda? Okay. All right. We're going to have public comment at this time on simply those items that we plan on taking action on this evening. And Mrs. Woolman, Mrs. Schlegel, are there any matters this evening upon which we're going to take action? I think there's a few on page 6.
Yes, Mayor. Actions to be taken on 9B 32 through 9B 38.
Okay, so as is the protocol of the governing body, at this time we'll entertain public comments on any item, specifically those enumerated as 9B 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, and 39. We will have a public portion later in the meeting, but since we're going to take action on these now, we're interested in public feedback. Anyone like to be recognized? Mr. Smith? When you come up, folks, just please give us, in addition to your name and address, the specific item that you're interested in talking about. I said 39, and I apologize. It's only up to 38.
Don Smith, 54 Vanderveer Road, 9B 38, rescinding the resolution of preliminary sanitary sewer for Rock Solid Realty, Howell Liberty Greens. I was just wondering what the purpose was, because I was at the zoning board meeting and they gave testimony that they had their preliminary approval, and now, of course, that appears to have changed. And I was wondering if anybody could give me any information why, or if that's going to change anything with their plan.
Sure. Through you, Mrs. Schlegel, if we may, Mr. Nunziato, is this for him to respond to? It's not. Okay. Go right ahead, Councilman.
Me personally, I did not like or have all the backup I needed to make that decision. When I received some of the other backup, I did not like it. I would like to see the authorization reversed.
When you say reversed, so they can't get sanitary sewer down there? I don't
No, I've been doing the
understand.
sanitary sewer zone. I just saw some backup information that I did not like, and I would like to vote to, well, I have to vote pretty soon on to rescind resolution R-08-348.
I
So,
think what we're going to do is rescind that original resolution and prepare a new resolution. For preliminary, is really the presence of the
Right.
sanitary sewer, but there seem to be some issues with the actual document.
Okay.
So it's going to rescind the resolution, and a new resolution will be prepared.
And I also don't like that the way it was presented about what I voted to approve, so.
Okay, the reason I bring it up is because the Environmental Commission was very concerned about sanitary sewer running down Fairfield Road. In fact, that's what our comment to the planning board reflected, that we were concerned about opening up a large area of ARE6 to high-density development, should that be done. And according to testimony given at the zoning board, they were going to be running with a forced main, and there were going to be all kinds of provisions to prevent the area south of the railroad track. So that's why I was a little concerned about what was going on. The commission is trying to keep abreast of what is going to happen with sewer going into the northern section of Fairfield Road, because honestly, our contention was we would like to see it run up 33, so that it would open up a large area of 33 to development, because the frontage area of Route 33 is certainly suitable for especially commercial development. But the big holdup on that is lack of sewer. I mean, Wawa is a prime example. And we know that Monmouth County Police Academy and Fire Academy want sewer into their facility. So we're just trying to watch the balancing act here, and that's why I question it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Anyone else who'd like to be recognized on any of these items?
Yes, Mayor. Ordinance, resolution, I should say, 9B34.
Sure.
Attorneys are here from the Brick Township Utility Authority. I'd like to leave you, give you some information.
He'll use the mic in a minute. He's just handing out some handouts. He's going to use the mic in a moment, folks. Thank you.
Print out both sides.
Mayor, while the chairman is handing that out, my name's Jerry Dasty. I'm the attorney for the Brick Township MUA. This is Chairman Batazzi.
Good evening.
Good evening. And I hope we're not disturbing the protocol, but we're here tonight to ask you.
Yeah, gentlemen, if you wouldn't mind, there
I'm
should
sorry,
be two
excuse me.
chairs.
You want us to sit?
Yeah, make
All right.
yourself comfortable, and again, into the mic, if you just give us your name and titles.
Sure, let's start again. My name is Jerry Dasty. I'm the attorney for the Brick Township Municipal Utilities Authority. Chairman Patrick Batazzi is here. And as you know, on the agenda tonight is a resolution we've asked you to adopt, which will give your consent to Brick Township MUA buying Parkway Water Company, so that we would then directly serve the approximate 1,950 people in the Ramtown section of the township. We're here to answer any questions. We've gone back and forth with your staff and with the committee over the last 2 or 3 weeks, answering all the questions we're aware of.
One of the
Go
most,
ahead, sir.
excuse me, Counselor, one of the most
Chairman, if you wouldn't
important,
mind, would you just give us your name and address officially for the record?
Patrick L. Batazzi, Brick Township.
Welcome, thank you.
I'm chairman of the Brick MUA. Most important information that we have here is that on the single sheet, there's a comparison what the residents in Howell Township is paying to Parkway Water. You can see the connection fee is 29 or something. I gave you all my sheets. But, and then you can see the difference of the rates. There'll be a reduction for the first year to the residents of Howell Township that will be serving of $130, reduced from their present rate.
And
Yep.
after that year?
Okay, you have questions from the council?
Yeah, and after that first year?
No, every year, well, we know now what the rates are, and the rates are obviously charged on consumption. The more water you use, just like Parkway charges, or anybody charges. The average Parkway user today pays $135 more this year than if we charge them directly. And you'll always be charged, the people in Ramtown will always be charged what we charge every other person
I
in
think the
Brick
question,
Township.
Mr. Dasty, is with regard to what the current rates are set at this year. It's obviously
Yes,
based on
that's right.
consumption. The concern that one would have might be in year 2 or year 3, might the base rate go up dramatically, and certainly people pay on consumption, but maybe you can talk to us about what has the average rate increase been, say, over the last 3 or 4 years to the ratepayers of the authority?
I can help you on that. 2 years ago, we didn't have any rate increase. We had the same problems that you gentlemen and ladies are having. You have a fixed increase and cost of living to all the employees. We have 134 employees. They get a 3.9 increase. Also, our health benefits are about $19,000 a year for each of our employees. And yes, $19,000 a year to each of our employees. And that sometimes goes up. So naturally, there will be a time when we have to do a rate increase. In this case, where we've had good, we didn't have many breakdowns, we didn't have replacement costs as we have had, we're going to hold it. We are doing a 5% increase. At this point, we went with a 5% increase, but we are probably, for the amount of people that we serve, and it's over 100,000 people in Point Pleasant, Howell Township, Point Pleasant Beach, and Brick Township, we're probably one of the lowest rates. We are half the price of New Jersey American, and we're definitely one-third cheaper than...
Please, sir, no foul language in these chambers.
Mr.
Sorry about
Shoemaker,
that.
to answer your, I guess, we don't know what the rates are going to be next year, but whatever we charge for the customers in Howell is the exact same charge that Chairman Batazzi is going to charge you 80,000 people in Brick.
The only reason it,
And I would also add one more thing. This year, it's 130 or so less the average customer. I found out today that there already is a BPU petition in by Parkway to raise your rates already.
again, right.
There's a petition that was filed in the spring. So that gap is going to get bigger.
He just had stated for the first year, so I thought maybe it was just something that you were doing for the first year. That's why he
No,
asked in his
no,
statement,
no.
no.
Every year it'll be the same.
Mrs. Dalton, you have a question?
Okay. And the rates are going to be the same no matter what. So you're really, now, right now, even though this is still Parkway Water, is the actual vendor for our residents here, until you accept this or until the change? Am I correct that the Brick Township water is the water that the
Yes.
people in Ramtown are
buying
getting?
from them.
That's exactly
Parkway, right, because Parkway's water isn't saleable,
Yes, yes.
right? Okay.
That's exactly
So,
right.
What the people in Ramtown now are doing is paying middleman.
I'm sorry?
What the people in Ramtown now are doing is paying a middleman to drink the water that we give you.
At an 82% increase, I believe, 2 years ago.
So you're going to eliminate the middleman and bring a reduction to the residents of Ramtown,
That's right.
and they get the same product?
Same
Yes.
product.
Okay.
I have to just make one quick thing, because I see Mayor Knopkin here. This goes all the way
Why
back
he's here.
to him and I. This was one of my very first meetings with Parkway Water 8 years ago. This is how far back this situation goes, so.
Sure, we're going to hear from the Honorable Mayor Kanaka later tonight.
I'm sure this is a good thing.
He came here late for this
The
issue.
chairman has given to you 2 copies of the contract we have with Parkway. And he's also given to you, our CFO has prepared a synopsis indicating on a percentage basis, approximately 30% savings is what more or less what it's going to be. I brought, because I know that Mrs. Schlegel's office will get inundated tomorrow, we brought about 24 of our rates. And every page, and here's the page that's tabbed is what our Brick Township people are charged. So if anybody wants to know tomorrow what we charge as opposed to what Howell charges, give them a copy of this and tell them to go to the blue page, and that answers their question.
Great.
Thank you for that.
I had a couple of questions, more from a service perspective. Can you talk to us about, from a customer service point of view, the kind of service our residents can expect with regard to billing, telephone response time when there's a problem? What's
You will have the same, and please believe me, you will have the same service our Brick residents have. We don't service Point Pleasant Beach and Borough because we sell them bulk water.
Okay.
They do their own work. We have a great organization. We're top shelf. I invite every one of you to come down to our campus. We have 11 acres there. We have a GIS system. We take most of our water from the Matitaconk River. We do pump it up when the water's plentiful to the reservoir. We store it there. We have 1 billion gallons that we can use at any time there's a shortage of water or the river is cutting down in its flow and we can no longer take it. We sell between 8 to 10 million gallons of water on an everyday rate, including the water that we sell to Parkway Water in bulk. The difference will be is that we will be servicing the meters. The meters are the same as ours, so we can always interchange them. We will do with only, the good thing about it, like we have 3.5 people that go around and do meter reading. And we'll probably only have to change and add 1/2 person, meaning that we take a person out of the field or from the reservoir crew and he does the meter reading. So our costs would not be that great or change or a burden on us, or that we're undertaking more than we can handle. We could handle yours, and we can handle probably everything that New Jersey American is covering for you, and do it a lot cheaper.
Mayor, at this point, Parkway Water Company has no employees, so I don't know what happens to the people in Ramtown if there's a problem.
That's why I asked. We've gotten complaints about service.
We have 140 employees.
140 employees?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions from the council?
No, sir.
Why don't we, on this topic, since you gentlemen are here, we'll go back to the other items. If anyone from the public have any questions on this particular resolution, we'll entertain them now. Anyone from the public have a question? Mr. Lariah, come on up. We got to get you on the recording, though, Mr. Lariah, just to be sure. I'm sorry.
I have another. Thank you.
He's going to try to get you down to the villages. Yes.
He wants to know if you could run the pipe to the villages.
No. Vince Lariah, 56C in the Villages. I've attended many meetings here when we heard of the horrific conditions in the water being supplied to all residents, and when I say all residents, I mean residents of Howell, where we were heard of radioactive contaminants in the piping. What's going to happen with that? Who's going to clean up that mess?
The good news, Mr. Lariah, is that, to the credit of Brick, when Parkway had the problem, it was not economically viable for them to implement the technical and chemical changes necessary to their system, so they abandoned the system. They began to buy water from Brick. Brick has actually been distributing the water, so the pipes in question are not, the wells that were feeding that water are not the issue. So that water is no longer being used. Now, to answer your question about the pipes in somebody's home, if they were concerned about the contaminants in the pipes in their home...
I'm not touching this one, Mayor.
It's a different issue that we don't have any control over, because it's private property and it's someone's personal content, and we've encouraged residents to have their water tested in their home to the extent that there was any contaminant that crystallized inside the pipe. The evidence is, it can be argued multiple ways as to whether or not there's anything that's crystallized in the pipes that's a problem, and we've encouraged residents to obviously do whatever they need to do to have that tested. But this issue buying the water from Brick is not going to be the issue. What we do know is that their water is flowing through the same pipes, and it has tested favorably.
That's what I was waiting
So if
for.
there was any issue, it is no longer apparent in the chemistry. So if someone has an isolated issue, we would encourage them to address it, but on a global basis, that does not appear to be the case any
I
longer.
was talking mains, by the way.
Okay. Yeah, the mains are good. Is there anything we got wrong?
Mayor,
there,
we
Commissioner?
did take, 2 years ago, we took coupons of all your different piping from the well area to homes, on lines, in the streets, and so forth.
Great.
And we sent them out to several different testing, in fact, one in California, and they all came back negative.
Anyone else from the public on this particular item you'd like to be recognized? Mayor Konopka, welcome, sir. He's sitting down, fellas. This could be trouble for
He's
you.
not used to sitting on that side.
No, I'm not. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the council. For the record, Timothy J. Konopka, 12 Jessica Drive, Howell, the beautiful community of Howell, New Jersey. I read with great interest today in the press of the pending proposal sale of Parkway, a water company, to the Brick MUA. And I read quite intently, and this evening I had an opportunity to speak to the gentleman to my right, the MUA chairman, and his representatives, and they provided me some great information, literature, which I read on the Brick utilities, and also some stats on rates. And I was very encouraged to see that there will be a substantial rate decrease, not only for 1 year, but for many years to come. That's very important. And also the quality of water issue. It is a well-solvent corporation. They have many employees, and they take the seriousness of water quality to the max with their customers, consumers. My concern, I don't know if this has been addressed with the governing body, some food for thought. And Mike Howell, you are a resident expert on water quality issues. You do that for a living. The concern is, down the road, if they need to increase their water supply. Right now, their major source is the Matitaconk River, and they use as backup their reservoir. I want to see some sort of provision maybe put in to the sales contract to make sure that those wells are never used again. And I don't know if that was discussed among the governing body. That's a major concern.
It's a great idea.
Yeah. So in the provision of some sort, stipulate that never again will those wells be used, because that water is just bad. So that's my major concern.
Mr. Dassett, can you comment on that? Is that something that can be written into the agreement between you and the selling company, or Mr. Chairman?
I can appreciate the former mayor's words, and we would have to be out of our mind. To even think about drawing
using
that
the
water.
wells.
Yes.
Well, I think the only
We want
thing
that water.
Mayor
We're
Cochran
going to
raised-
seal well 2, and we're going to close down your water treatment plant number 2.
Is that the one on Digger and Newton's Corner Road?
Yeah, I read your comments. It is not our property. We don't own it. That property was Laurel Manors Associates, and they gave Parkway Water. I did all the research on it today after I read your comments in the paper. We have an easement. Well, we have an easement when we buy Parkway Water, but the easement was given to Parkway Water. It's not owned. It's owned by, as I said, Laurel Manor Associates.
Well, let me go back to Mayor Konopka's comment. We agree with you that it would be insane to reopen them, but I think we're all realists that at some point, we're all going to go off and do different things, and you might not be the chairman forever, or Mr. Dassey might not be the attorney forever.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, I can tell you I won't be here forever. But in any event, if you're so firm in your convictions, can we get, if it's not something that can be in the agreement, can we get a letter of confirmation and then status update says you've shut that down so they can never be used? I think that would be to the protection and the benefit of our residents, and I'm not sure if you can comment.
I don't have a problem having our attorney, and I'll sign it, giving you the secure word that we would not be using water from there. We plan to seal that well and no longer take water. We don't even want to have anyone think possibly, that we're going to be taking water out of here for any future lawsuits. And that was the reason why we did not purchase this in 2005.
Right.
Is we wanted to see how things were going to go for the last couple of years, and things are fine, and we're here to buy.
So can we push the envelope? Can this be in your agreement with Parkway?
Mr. Mayor, I don't want to go back to Parkway. We don't need to go back to Parkway, frankly. We have the agreement with them, we have a purchase price with them, we're set with them. We want to go to the BPU in a heartbeat. The faster we get to BPU and get the approval, the faster the rates go down.
We agree.
If we dance with Parkway for another month, we're not going to buy this property. I'll tell you right now, we're not going to buy it.
So we have
my
your...
suggestion to you, sir, would be that we will be happy, per the chairman's direction, we'll be happy to send a letter to you and Mr. Bennett confirming that we're not going to use there's a Cohansey aquifer. We're not going to use the wells that are drilled in the Cohansey aquifer. That's the aquifer that has the problem for Parkway water.
And you'll go on to say that the wells will be shut down in a way that they couldn't be used.
Yes, sir, and
Okay.
I think as a practical matter, I think the DEP has already revoked those water allocation permits for those wells, so they'll never get used.
Okay.
There is one very deep well that's owned by Parkway, which is about 1,000 feet deep, which they do have the ability to use. We'll continue to use that well. That's a totally different aquifer.
Is that the one on Western Drive?
You got me. I don't know.
Our engineers know, I will not,
It's
I cannot say.
it's the only
if
well
it
that's
is.
ongangoing, sir. I couldn't tell you where it
Okay.
is, but we can find out.
Mr.
But we'd be
Kanaka,
very silly to pay, we're paying $3.5 million for this
Sure.
water company. The revenue back to us is a very slow payment. There's a lot of private industry that we could do it, but we have the water, and we're already connected, and we have a sale going on.
Mayor
And
Kanaka,
we had
any
to
other-
compete for this sale. There was another buyer.
Okay.
And if you had that other buyer in here, your rates would be, what is going down would go higher. Trust me.
Good. Do you have any more comments, Mayor Kanaka? Go right ahead, sir.
I'm very encouraged to hear that, and I just want to make sure, and for the attorneys to ensure that this is a visible document and it's permanent legal document so that it doesn't get lost somewhere in the shuffle. So everybody is aware that that is the case. They agree to that, and the bad water in the Ramtown section of Howell will never be used by this organization.
Governor, you know what needs to be in that letter. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
So again, thank you so much. Very encouraging. And with that said, I strongly endorse this 100%. I think it's a great win-win for the community.
Thanks, Mayor Kanaka. Anyone else from the public on this? I'm sorry, go ahead. Mr. Howell,
Mayor,
please.
I have a couple of questions real quick. The well house that you're going to shut down on Digger and Newton's Corner Road, that's the one, Billy, that's owned by
Yes,
Laurel Crest?
Laurel Manor Associates.
Laurel Manor Associates. Now, who's going to be responsible for the demolition of that building and the sealing of that well? Is that going to be you folks, or are you going to leave that
We're
the
gonna
well
own it.
house there?
No, I couldn't tell you if we're going to physically leave it there. We're going to be the ones who own it. We'll be responsible for it. We'll be glad to talk to you if and when we buy the system.
Okay.
One of the other questions I have is in the paperwork that you sent to all of us, whereas the township has been advised that the authority, after the completion of the acquisition, will charge the same user fee for water consumption to residents of Howell Township as it presently charges to residents of Brick Township, and will never charge residents of Howell Township for water usage at a different rate than Brick residents without obtaining prior approval from the BPU.
Council, Deputy Mayor, just for your own, we took that out.
Okay, so that's what we
At your-
spoke about,
right.
it's been stricken, so in perpetuity, what
Yes,
Brick
sir.
pays, we pay? Yes, sir. Okay.
The new resolution ends with the same rates as Brick Township.
Okay.
All right, any other members of the public who'd like to comment on this specific resolution? Okay, gentlemen, we'll obviously act on this pretty shortly.
Thank you.
So thank you for your, you do not, well, you can.
got our word, we got Pat.
That's fine.
You have mine, sir.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments? Thank you very much, both you gentlemen. Anyone else have any comments? Again, 9B 32 to 38. Anyone from the public? 32 to 38. Okay. At this time, we're going to close this portion of public. And what I'd like to do at this time, since we do have these representatives from Brick, is just deviate for a moment. We need to go into regular session. So I'd ask a member of the council to make a motion, please, to go into regular session.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or remarks? Hearing none, motion and second to go into regular session, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes, I'd like to ask a member of the council to move Articles 9B 32 to 9B 38.
So moved, man.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or remarks?
Question on 9B38.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like for someone to explain to me, why are we rescinding this resolution that we just adopted on August the 12th?
That was the question that Mr. Smith had. I think the answer was Mr. Walsh had some concerns about some of the backup data, wanted some additional review by it.
That's what I want to know. What are his concerns?
What were his concerns?
Yeah.
Mr. Walsh?
I'm not comfortable with the sewers running down Fairfield Road all the way to the schools.
Okay, but for what reason, though? Why? What is your, I mean, there's a lot of things I don't feel good about, but
I don't feel comfortable. Our 208 plan ends right there at the railroad tracks on Fairfield Road. My personal feeling is I would like not see our 208 plan broken at any time.
So are you saying, because in the resolution, it said that it was in the sewer service plan, that's what I'm trying, my point I'm trying to
I
make.
have no problem with the building.
In the resolution, okay, it had, the verbiage that was in the resolution wasn't just granting like the preliminary, as, you know, just saying that it's available. It was saying, as Councilman just said, it meant, it had in there down Fairfield Road.
So the answer is, it was a technical problem with the resolution, because it's in the 208 plan, is that right?
Only partially in the 208 plan. The 208 plan only covers to the train tracks. The verbiage in the reso actually said down the entirety of Fairfield Road to 524, which breaks the 208 plan.
So this was an issue where we don't need it to run the whole length, and it needs to be corrected to reflect what the 208 plan calls for.
That's
So
correct.
this is a technical error.
That's correct. That's why I said it would be the resolution would come back.
Yeah.
Does that answer your?
I have no problem that the property itself is in the 208 plan, and
Bill.
I'm just against, after asking for additional backup and seeing some stuff that I did not have at that time, I was under the impression that we were voting on that this property was in the 208 plan. That's what I agreed to. I will never agree. I am against ever breaking our 208 plan, or our 208 plan stops in my eyes is where our sewer stops, because I believe where sewers go, building follows.
Mrs. Schumacher,
I'm not saying I agree or disagree with what you're saying, but what you're saying and what she's saying and what he's saying does not agree. And correct me if I'm wrong. You're saying that this is not in the 208 plan.
No.
They're saying that it's the verbiage in the resolution that you're concerned with,
That's
correct?
not true.
Okay.
The property itself is in the 208 plan.
Correct.
Okay? I never said it wasn't in the 208
No.
plan. But when the sewers run past the railroad tracks on Fairfield Road, the
Right.
208 plan ends at the railroad tracks.
Correct.
The sewer was running all the way to 524. I'm a big advocate that once we break our 208 plan and run sewers where we're not supposed to, we are going to face one lawsuit after the next of people wanting us to break the 208 plans for them.
I agree with you. I just wanted you to clarify that statement.
Okay.
That's all. I wanted to force you to clarify your statement. Good enough.
Force
No,
me, yeah.
that's what I mean.
Force me, okay.
I wanted it to be
All right.
clarified, because what you were saying and what they were saying was two different issues, and but it is. Okay.
Okay.
I've been strong-armed in 2 days.
All right, any other questions or comments? We're under comments, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any other comments or questions? All right, hearing none, I'm sorry, Mrs. Dalton.
Wow, just real quick, I would like to encourage people to go to that propertyroom.com and bid on all this fine merchandise, including that inflatable Santa and reindeer.
Included.
All right, any other comments or remarks?
I'm glad she qualified that reindeer.
I just want to, as it relates to the Brickwater Municipal Utilities Authority acquisition 9B34, I want to echo the sentiments of my predecessor, Mayor Konopka. I think this is a very positive outcome to a situation that's been going on for some while. It's rare that ratepayers realize a decrease and get better service and have a greater level of comfort with the quality of the product. So I'm personally thrilled that Brick has finally come to closure in hopefully acquiring this property, and we appreciate your persistence in staying on this, gentlemen, so thank you. All right, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Okay, I'm going to call the council's attention back to our consent agenda items. This is Article 7 on our agenda. We'll go right through. I'm on page 1. Actually, from a workshop perspective. On page 3, any comments on page 3 with respect to the new business? This would include Articles 9A1 through 9B7 on page 3. Any questions or comments from the council?
On what, Mayor?
We're just on the consent agenda. Any article or any questions on Articles 9A1 to 9B7? This
Yes.
is page 3. Mrs. Dalton, go right ahead.
9B6,
Okay.
authorize refund of overpayments of taxes various. I looked at the numbers for the refunds that we're to be giving for overpayments. I'd like to know if those numbers were figured into our budget, or if they were simply, in other words, we're giving this money back. Did we count on this money to be in our budget? Because one of the numbers, let me see, one of them is over $140,000, I believe.
Mr. Filiatro, can you comment for us, please, sir?
We are not, we're not allowed to directly budget. That is one of the reasons, the effect of tax appeals. We are starting to get our state tax appeals in now, which is why you're seeing some numbers. These are commercial properties. That's one of the reasons why we don't go to the maximum reserve for uncollected taxes. That's our cushion, if you will, to cover things like this, is that we do have the reserve for uncollected taxes. We do not go to the maximum collection rate. We do back off and leave ourselves a little cushion on that, and this is one of the reasons why.
Okay.
So I wasn't sure. Those are all as a result of tax appeals? I didn't think.
I don't know, I don't know property by property whether they are or not. I do know that this time of year is usually the time that you start seeing the state tax appeals come in. So I'm anticipating you seeing large numbers there. They're probably state appeals.
They're all, I'm looking at the charges. It's for Centex Homes. 141,000, 76,000, 15,000, and 78,000 that we overbilled Centex Homes. And you're saying that
I don't know if that was an overbill. That was either an appeal, all right, a reduction that was granted by the courts, or it was an overpayment where they just paid us too much money. I do not know, looking at this resolution, whether it really was an overbilling.
Well, the resolution has a reason, overbilled, or 2008 county tax appeal, or county appeal, or state appeal, and the vast majority of these are overbills, and I'm not comfortable. Nobody voluntarily pays more than they are obligated to pay. Maybe $2 or $3, I think, maybe, because my husband rounds out the check. But other than that, Centex is not paying voluntarily an extra $300,000 to us. So I would just like to know.
All right.
How come the bills weren't right?
Okay. As far as Centex goes, those are the master lots for the subdivision. And that's the first half of the taxes, which it's kind of when you have a subdivision, you collect the first half of the taxes to give back to them, because we're actually collecting taxes on the individual lots. And that's a product of development. There's an overbill here for 26,000 I'm picking up. That appears to be, since it says it's Q farm, it may have just become farm qualified. Another big one I see here was a county of appeal.
But you say that we have a reserve for taxes to adjust for that.
Yes, this directly affects our collection rate, which is why we have a reserve for uncollected taxes.
And you're
why we do
comfortable?
not
you're comfortable that we had enough in the reserve for the
Yes, and-
422,000?
I would say going back to around, the August, September period last year, I think you would find a resolution that's probably very similar in dollar amounts to this one.
Okay.
They do look like scary amounts, but they aren't unusual to the operation. This is, $400,000 of total appeals. We billed out $150 million just last month.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anything else, Mrs.
No.
Dalton? This is specific, folks, to page 3. We're talking 9A1 to 9B7. Anything else? All right, we're going on to page 4. Any questions or comments from the council with respect to 9B8?
Excuse me, Mayor.
9B18.
Mayor,
Oh,
do
yep.
please remove from the agenda 9B11,
Okay,
12, and 39.
all right, so we're not going to talk about those tonight from a workshop perspective. Okay, that's fine. So on page 4, any questions on 9B8, 9, 10, and 13 to 18?
I just have 2 comments.
Please.
9B18, there's a typo, the word global spelled global. And 9B16, it says Deputy Mayor Robert Walsh. Should say Deputy
Should
Mayor
be.
Michael Howell. Those are my only comments.
Okay. Mrs. Schlegel, you'll make note of those corrections?
You missed that
Would you
one,
repeat
Mayor.
that?
That one flew by.
No, on the resolution, 9B8, the word global is spelled wrong.
Oh, 9B18.
Yeah.
Inside the resolution
Inside the
itself.
resolution itself. And 9B16, Mr. Walsh is
On the resolution.
designated at the bottom as the deputy mayor.
There she is.
I have a question.
Okay, Mr. Walsh?
On 9B8, when I read this, I am all for waiving the fees for, people over there serving in the global war on terrorism. I know that we have a specific situation with a soldier coming back who's been seriously injured in Howell Township, and I want to make sure that this includes that all fees for them is also waived. Is this, or does this not include them? The way I read it, I would say no, it does not.
But
Little
it
help
said
here?
that they're mobilized, not that they came home and they need help now. Right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Hey, when we originally passed this ordinance, and I'm happy that I was the person when we originally brought this up to pass it, and it was not long after the conflict started, we wrote it to accommodate the families that were here while the soldiers were overseas. And at the time, admittedly, because the conflict had just started, we hadn't begun to realize the casualties and all of the injuries as folks were coming home, that they would be coming, that they'd be returning with these conditions. So I think what we should do is we should add it so that it includes those who are disabled and are coming home. And I don't know whether or not we can do that and what that change might require.
Mayor, I think our ordinance already allows the township to waive fees for,
Disabled vets?
not just for disabled veterans, it's for handicap upgrades to houses. I believe that's in the land use ordinance. I believe the township has the ability to waive those fees.
All right, well, could you check that for
I
us?
certainly will.
Deputy Mayor, your beliefs aren't what I'm going to lean on at this moment. Can I please get the answer?
Lean on
Oh,
me.
okay, could somebody look into this for me? I really would like to see that, but I know we have a veteran coming home from Iraq right now with some issues.
If he's a 100% disabled war vet, then he won't have to even pay property taxes. But he's got to be
Governor, would
the
you
owner of
just
the house.
pull the microphone a little? I'm sorry.
He's not got to be the owner of the house. Okay, so give it to somebody in the
Yeah.
house.
He's the son of
Right,
people that have
okay.
been Howell residents
So
for a
then that
long
would not
time.
impact, that statute would not impact on it. So the
Okay.
waiver of the fees, I'll have to look at your
Well,
current
could we do
ordinance.
another resolution, or could we add it? I mean, I don't mind voting on this one now, this is beneficial.
Well, tonight's, we're not voting anyway, so we'll look at it and see if we can add, to cover what you're looking for. So, a family member, I mean, a family that has a disabled
In the house.
member of the armed forces that has returned from the war and is disabled, to have the fees waived for them is what you're looking for.
You speak better than me, sir, thank you.
Okay.
I don't agree with that.
Mr. Schlegel, you have something on that?
Well, I just want to mention that we probably should have that on for the 23rd.
Okay.
So, I mean, the new resolution, okay? Because this is pressing, if that's the direction council wants to go, and so it will be an add-on
Good.
then for the
Okay.
23rd.
We'll look to you to get it ready for us. Anything else between 9:08 through 10, and then 9:13 to 18? All right, moving along on page 5, any questions or comments from the council on Articles 9B19 to 9B29? Questions or comments?
On 9B24, have they started work on the swim club on Howell Road? Does anybody know? Hello, Mr. Dwyer?
This is
moving
to
along.
accept their performance guarantee, so they probably should not be working until they have posted this guarantee.
I've driven by, there's just a sign. All right, on page 6, any questions or comments? 9B 30, 31, 32, and 40. 30, 31, 32, and 40.
Can we already do that?
Well, 40, I think we have to pull, Mayor, right?
Was 40 in yours? I think just 39. Was 40 pulled? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're not.
Yes, and 40
Yes.
not, yeah, so 40 is also being pulled. So any questions on 30, 31, or 32?
Right, we did
We
32,
voted on
Mayor.
32, Mayor.
Okay.
30 and 31.
Okay. So anything on 41 or 42? Top of page 7. All right, let's go on then to 9C1. We have a residency change regarding Mary Lou Lucy, who has been our MRSA representative. I believe we have correspondence in the file. What's the pleasure of the council by way of discussion on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I read the authorizing ordinance with respect to qualifications to be on the board, to be on MRSA, and it appears plainly obvious to me that if one is no longer a resident, one may not serve on behalf of the residents of this township. I think that we should thank Ms. Lucy for providing us with a candid explanation of her living circumstances. However, it seems obvious to me that given that she no longer is a resident of the township, she is no longer qualified to serve on that position.
Deputy Mayor, if I may.
Yeah, Mr. Walsh.
I've read it also, and I agree with Councilwoman Dalton. Ms. Lucy, I think, has done a tremendous job as our MRSA representative, but she did leave town. And I believe it's pretty clear that you have to be a Howell Township resident. If I moved to Florida, I don't know if they'd let me remain a council person here in Howell.
I think we would if you promised not to come back.
Make a little bit light of it, Mayor. Can we take a 5-minute break?
No.
He's getting out of line. Gavel him, please,
Right.
Mayor. I'd just like to, may God be with Mary Lou Lucy. She's a fine lady, and I'm glad she represented us when she did. But I think it's pretty clear that with the residency change, that we must also make a change up here. A lot of us know the situation, and I was very proud of when the circumstances that befall on her when her husband passed away, that we immediately put her in that same position. Because that position does provide a couple things that are very, very beneficial to her and her family at that time. And I'm very proud we made that decision as human beings. I thought that was a governing body of Howell working for Howell's best interest and the people of Howell's best interest only. Nothing partisan about it. It was a unanimous vote, and I'm proud I was part of that vote. But be that she left town, it also is, it's the law, and I think we're all supposed to obey them, so.
Mr. Showmaker, you have a comment?
No.
Okay. So from a parliamentary procedure, Governor Bennett, we need to accept, or at least enact her resignation. What's the appropriate way to accept this?
The letter's not a resignation. By operation of law, sorry, I have to use the thing. By operation of law, she has vacated the position due to the fact that she is no longer a resident of the township. So as an operational loss, she's no longer there, which means you currently have a vacancy.
Okay.
So at the pleasure of the council, when you wish to fill that vacancy, you can. It would be for the unexpired term ending on January 31st, 2011.
Okay.
That's the term that's available.
So the pleasure of the council, we'd like to advertise for applications and
Yes.
begin a process?
Yes.
Absolutely, Mayor. Could we make a motion now of anybody who applied in the past?
Can we make a motion? of
Can we
anyone who-
appoint someone who's applied?
It's the pleasure of the majority vote. 3 people say they want a certain person, and it shall be done. So
Nothing's been done. I don't have, there's nothing in here.
there's nothing in our packet tonight. I think
No.
your question was, if someone
No.
had previously applied,
Yes.
could we? I mean, the council is the appointing authority and could appoint anyone who met the qualifications at any time.
Ms. Schlegel, maybe you can perhaps include in our packet for next week anyone that had applied for that position.
So do we want to advertise, put something out there that we're looking for applicants? Is that the
Whatever
pleasure
the
of the
direction,
council?
whatever the
I
direction
think
of
we
the
go by the
council.
ones that we had already.
Yeah.
right?
Go by the ones we already have on
I
file?
think.
Go by what we have on file.
There you go.
So
Okay,
you
have
want to
your
just see
direction.
them again?
I think it'd be a good idea to put them in our packets.
Okay.
And then if we decide to advertise, why spend the money if we don't need
Spend the
to?
money.
Good.
All right, they'll be in your packets.
Great, and you'll put it on the agenda then for the next meeting? Because
Yes.
by then we'll have read them, okay? All right, if we go back to the beginning of our agenda, we have a few items for discussion. The first is Article 7A1, Tax Assessor Computer Services. Council is set to discuss the request of the Tax Assessor's Department regarding computer vendor conversion. Mr. Filiatro, this is yours.
Yes, I submitted a package to the manager, with proposal from the acting tax assessor for a new computer program that will increase efficiencies and save us money. Along the line, it would involve the investment of $15,000 worth of capital funds to buy the new program. It certainly will help as far as our service to the public, in that the new program will be much more legible and much more easier for the layman to understand. It does help her in her appraisal package and appraisal program, and will increase her efficiencies above what she's getting now with the current program. I brought it up for discussion because I do recommend it. I don't think $15,000 is a large expenditure, but would save $5,000 a year in annual operating fees between the two companies. The reason I bring it up is we did not project it in our capital ordinance, so it would require, in our capital program, it would require a change to our capital budget, which we can do, and an ordinance to appropriate capital funds for that purchase. We do have enough capital surplus that it would not involve debt.
Okay. Mrs.
The
Schlegel,
other
what's
thing
your-
is, I believe we need a resolution to terminate the current interlocal
That's my question.
agreement.
Yeah, well, yes.
That was the reason that it was coming really also
Coming
in
for
front
you.
of
We
council.
need to do that concurrently because it's going to take 2 readings for the ordinance, and we do have a time frame on the cancellation of the current
And
contract.
Mrs. Schlegel, what's your office's position on this?
I concur with Mr. Filiatro's recommendation, and I want to actually thank the acting tax assessor, because the department heads are really trying to increase efficiency while saving money. And this is going to be approximately I believe it's going to be like a 3-year, it's going to take 3 years for the return on the investment. So I have to concur with Mr. Filiatro.
Okay. Questions from the council on this proposal? Mrs. Dalton, anything?
I saw a comment in the memo from the deputy tax assessor, or the acting tax assessor, I should give her due credit, with respect to the revaluation company giving us some difficulties with information regarding commercial properties. Is that something about what I read concerning the that we are dependent on the revaluation company even after the revaluation is over and done with?
For appeals and stuff.
We were supposed to have been fully trained on
Yes.
utilizing the state cost approach for commercial properties. To date, I have yet to receive this manual or any training regarding this process. Didn't that revaluation company get $1 million from us?
That was not That was not the it's not the revaluation company that she's asking for training for. It's
Right.
Microsoft Systems.
Right.
Which
Okay.
is the current program we have that, to do the training as far as the commercial properties.
That's one of the reasons, actually, that she wanted to change, is that they had made promises of training and things like that, and she has not yet received
Well,
that
I think
training.
Mrs. Dalton raises a different issue. We had a contract, we paid a pretty handsome fee. If they're not providing the services, then I think we have a different issue, not subject to this discussion, but
Right.
if the reval company isn't fulfilling
No, no.
their
No,
obligation...
it's not the
No,
reval
there
company.
is-
Okay.
No.
Okay.
It's
There is no provision here that Microsoft is, Microsystems is the company that provides the current assessment package.
Understood.
They're the ones that are not
Okay.
performing as
So
far
it's
as the
not the
training.
reval folks.
It's not the reval company.
Do you have any other questions, Mrs. Dalton, on this?
No.
Mr. Howell, Deputy Mayor?
Mayor, if I could just jump backwards for a second. As far as the waiving of the construction fees, it is in our ordinance book. It's 108-3-5. It says the waiver of construction permit fee, it is within the discretion of the Township Council to waive a construction permit fee if an applicant is undertaking the alteration or improvement of an existing public or private structure solely to make it more handicap accessible, per NJAC 52:27.
There you go.
So,
That's only one component, excuse me. My understanding, that's only one fee that Councilman Walsh is talking about. He is desirous of us being able to waive the other fees that are currently waived for members of the War on Terrorism, and you want those fees to be also waived for disabled war veterans that have returned and reside in Howell. So that is one component, is the construction fees for the disabled benefits of accessibility, but there's also the additional fees that we want to see if we can have included also. Is that correct?
I would like to thank our barrister for straightening out Deputy Mayor Howell.
All right, about this issue, Mr. Howell,
Yeah.
any comments on Mr. Filiatro's recommendation?
I'm all in agreement with him, Mayor.
Mrs. Showmaker?
My only question is, and I think you answered it, is the interlocal agreement we have with the county. We're encouraging interlocal, what is it that what agreement do we have, what were we doing with them?
They were providing the Mod 4 assessment package through this Microsystems company.
Because of that lack of, okay. So,
Okay.
well,
I'm
I
fine.
just think we need to commend
No.
the acting tax assessor, because it was her due diligence, and it was very well stated in her letter.
Great, Mr. Walsh, any comments? You're good? Okay, and I'm in agreement, so you have our direction to proceed, please.
Thank you, Mayor.
782, we're going to have a conversation with respect to the hotel ordinance. The deputy mayor has asked us to talk about the issue with respect to kitchenettes and whether they should be or should not be permissible. So,
Absolutely not.
Mr. Howell, I'm going to turn it over to you. I know you requested this, so take it away.
Mayor, a resident had raised a concern that in the hotel ordinance, that the hotel ordinance is actually silent on allowing or not allowing kitchenettes. And I know it was something that we had talked about, because everybody was always concerned about this, any hotel that would be built in Howell becoming a long-term stay. So what I would like to propose is that we add some language to the ordinance, if the ordinance is going to be in place, that restricts the in-room cooking ability to a microwave and a coffee pot. That way it takes out the stove or oven or whatever, lessens the chance of it becoming long-term housing or Section 8 housing.
Have you been in Atlantic City?
Mrs. Showmaker, go ahead.
Have you been to Atlantic City? Have you stayed at a hotel? On any of the things down there?
Hold on, Mrs. Showmaker, 1 second. Folks in the audience, please, I would just ask for your indulgence. The microphone picks up the sound. If you need to have a conversation, we would just kindly ask that you take it out into the hallway, please. Mrs. Showmaker.
I just
go
want to
ahead.
make sure, the definition of a kitchenette. I thought we defined that. We've been on this, we went this route once.
It was never changed.
But I thought we had a definition, we didn't define the definition of kitchenette and put that verbiage in that ordinance?
No,
After we had that long discussion?
no, it was never changed.
I could have sworn we did, but
I thought we did too.
I would like for the minutes to be pulled from that, because I thought that not only did we discuss it, but we also wanted the definition of kitchenette put in there so that there would be no ambiguity of what exactly it is that we wanted in that ordinance.
I think the deputy mayor has in front of him the actual ordinance online, which is the most codified, up-to-date version, and there's nothing in there, Mr. Howell?
No, not at the last I looked, which was this morning.
All right, so the first takeaway is we need to pull the minutes from the meetings where this was talked about, because I think my recollection is the same as Mrs. Dalton and Mrs. Showmaker's, which was we were clear that we wanted updated language to be incorporated, and it appears as if that has not happened.
Right.
Okay. Are there any questions, comments?
Just say,
Go
why?
ahead.
I mean, if that's what a majority of you want, and it's not done, why do you want to pull the minutes? Why don't we just do it?
Well, I think the only reason is, was there anything else that we missed that should also have been in there?
Oh.
Because we had a lengthy discussion, Governor, about a whole myriad of things, and maybe other things were missed. You raise a good point, though. If that's just the easy thing, we can fix it.
I think we need to
Hold on one
Mr. Mayor,
second. Mrs. Dalton, you have the floor?
I think it's my recollection that we had a discussion about this after the ordinance, the introduction of the ordinance to repeal the hotel ordinance was not, did not happen when I and Mr. Walsh voted in favor of introduction. Mr. Howell was not here, and yourself and Mrs. Showmaker did not vote in favor of that introduction. My recollection is we had a discussion at that time after we, after the ordinance did not get introduced, about what it was that the goals were and what the aims were. And I believe that's when we had the really lengthy discussion on making sure that if this was going to be talked about, we were going to eliminate kitchenettes. I also recall a discussion about lengths of stay.
That, I think, is in, though.
Yeah, the length of stay is in there for 14 days, but you know, one of the other things, Mayor, that's not addressed in there is, it just said you can't be in the room for more than 14 days. It doesn't say you can't move next door.
But I have, there's another one.
No, I thought it said stay
Yeah.
in that.
And as a citizen of Howell brought up recently, who's going to enforce it?
Right. Well, yeah, actually, I spoke to Mr. Bennett about that, and I think we do have the ability to have the hotels submit to the township on a weekly basis a list of the guests, so that if we did see the same name 3 times in a row, they hold on, you know.
Well, I think, though, that the point that Governor Bennett raises is a good one, which is, if we're all in agreement minimally that we have a concern and all we want are microwaves and coffee pots, do we have a consensus that we agree at least to that much, which was
No.
your recommendation?
We have no consensus from me if that's what you're looking for. Okay, I don't think it should be an allowable use in any area. I voted against it when it first.
Hotels at
Hotels, I don't think it should be allowable as a permitted use in any zone. I voted against it when it first came up. I still believe that way. So never mind what should be in it. I don't think it should be in it. Okay? I don't want to see a coffee pot or anything else.
Okay.
And folks, listen, if one went before the zoning board and the zoning board thought it was the right place to grant the variance, okay, that's what democracy, that's what our form of government's all about. I just don't think it should be a permitted use.
Okay.
I'm not telling you I don't think, I think it'd be the worst thing in the world. I was part of something a couple of years ago with Mr. Dwyer, and that's why I played around with it before the pool club started yet, because I just thought it was in the wrong place. I am thrilled that he went forwards with his pool club idea and where it is going, and I think it'll be a tremendous asset to our community. That's why I was playing around with him before, if it had started yet. And I'm not saying an hotel would not be an asset, but I would like, I don't think it should be a permitted use. I think it should go through the zoning board, variance is granted in that. So never mind a coffee pot and a microwave. Thank you, Mayor, but I'm good with my coffee,
I
buddy.
don't want to spill on your hand there.
Okay? So no consensus from me that there should be a coffee pot and a microwave in there. Okay?
Well, let's go back then. Mr. Howell, I think we're clear on where Mr. Walsh is. You wanted to have a conversation about amending the ordinance to be more specific around kitchenettes. I think we know what Mr. Walsh's position is. Mrs. Dalton, Mrs. Showmaker, is your position that you'd like to proceed in amending the ordinance on this topic as has been suggested by the deputy mayor, or do you also want to move in a different direction?
I agree with Mr. Walsh, and I think I was the one who introduced or seconded the attempt to introduce the ordinance repealing it.
Okay.
That's my primary feeling. If it is not the consensus of the majority of this board, then I will present my other opinions on what's wrong with the current hotel ordinance at that time.
Okay, so Mr. Howell, are you still interested at this time in having this amended to address the issue of the kitchenettes, or do you want to?
Yeah, man, you know what? I'd rather stay on that course. I mean, if it's something that's that's permitted in a zone now, then let you know, as Mr. Walsh just said, let democracy take its course. Let somebody go to either a zoning board meeting or a planning board meeting, present their case to the planning board, the zoning board, let the residents hear, and let the residents and the planning board or the zoning board decide. That's how that's how things are supposed to work here.
Well, I think
we keep getting punched in the mouth telling us that Howell is the most business-killing town in not just the county, but the state. So what do we want to do? Get punched in the mouth again?
So you want to continue to proceed on the course of amending this to make the correction. Mrs. Showmaker, what's your position? Do you want to proceed in amending, or are you more interested in the course that Mr. Walsh and Mrs. Dalton have suggested?
I take the fifth.
Well, as Rudy Giuliani said to Barack Obama, you can't vote present.
We had a lengthy discussion on the kitchenettes. I assumed that it was in the ordinance. Without reviewing the ordinance as it is on the books, I cannot clearly make a determination as to the way I want to go. Because there's not a backup in here, and I don't carry the ordinance book around with me.
Let me paint a picture for you. Maybe this will help the hypothesis. If we have a hotel ordinance, which we do,
Yes, we do.
and the ordinance is ambiguous with respect to the issue of kitchenettes, Mr. Howell's recommendation is, right now, the language is ambiguous as to a kitchenette. In other words, you could put a stove and all kind of amenities in there, a dishwasher, whatever the case may be. His recommendation is that we add language to the current ordinance that says, as it relates to kitchenette-related utilities, you may only have a microwave oven and a coffee pot, whereas today, it is unclear, so therefore, a hotel could put in whatever they wanted. His recommendation, I believe, if I get this correct, is to add some clarity and some specificity around it. And so, if today the ordinance is ambiguous, would you be open to amending it the way that Mr. Howell has recommended?
No, and I'll tell you why. Because you can't just put something without looking at the overall, because I think different types of hotels are going to have different classifications and different needs. Perhaps, just like I said, in Atlantic City, there are certain hotels that do have what I would call a kitchenette, very high quality hotels. And then but I know what his concern is, and I don't want to go in that gray area because that's not what we're to do. So I don't want to be site specific, but I think when you're splitting hairs here, and I need to look at the entire ordinance. And it has to be more teeth than what you're asking to do.
So you would be amenable to looking in his recommendation if you had time to look at the totality of the ordinance?
Correct.
Okay. And here's my concern on the issue. I'm not talking about any specific site. It's irrelevant to me. I have great respect for both my colleagues. My concern is if we don't have an ordinance that at least defines some parameters, how big it can be, what its hours of operation can be. While I have great respect for our zoning and planning boards, and they do a wonderful job, we leave it completely open to whoever those people are at the time 2-3 years from now. And so at least if we have the framework of an ordinance, it can only be so big, and it can only have this many parking spaces. We have the basis of something that can give us some ground rules about what we do and don't want, rather than a big hearing at the zoning board, and 3 or 4 or 5 years from now, maybe they feel differently, and they vote for something that the community really doesn't want, or really isn't appropriate. That's why I think we need to have an ordinance that needs a framework. I would be open to addressing whether you want a big full kitchen or not to split hairs, but my kids are small, and we go on vacation, we stay at a place for a week, we need a little refrigerator in the room. We put milk in there for the kids in the morning, or a couple of bottles of water. You know, we're not making big fancy meals, but I think the same would be true for anyone of any age. So I am amenable to adding some clarity to the ordinance so that it would reference coffee pot, microwave, and you can define how big a refrigerator can be. You don't need to put one of these
Right, you can put a one
these
cubic
big-
one in there, and actually it was Mr. Schneider, Mayor, who mentioned, hey, you have somebody who's a diabetic, they need to keep their insulin cold.
Correct. And so I'm okay with that. And so it sounds to me that there are 3 people who would be willing to revisit amending this, and I think the requirements are Mrs. Showmaker wants time to review the whole ordinance before you'd be willing to make a decision either way.
Basically,
Right.
you're touching the points. You don't want to box yourself into an area where if, let's say, a Marriott or a, I don't know, it's like Comfort Inn Suites or whatever it is that you want to make sure that you're not tightening up, making it so broad-based or so tight that something that you would like to come into your community is unable to come
Correct.
into community because of the way, the restrictions. So you don't want it to be so restrictive or so broad-based. And without reviewing the entire ordinance as it is stated, I think it's impossible.
All right, so I think the only consensus we have is that Mrs. Showmaker might be open to making changes. I would be open to revisit it. Mr. Howell would be open to revisit it. So I think on that straw poll, it would appear that we can revisit this. How much time do you need, Mrs. Showmaker, to review this, and when can we have it back on the
One
agenda?
day.
1 day.
Give me a day.
Mr. Howell said, we've been taking shots for being builder unfriendly. Well, if he'll vote to rescind the ordinance, I'll take one shot. So, take your one shot, Deputy Mayor.
Oh, man. No, I want to stay the course that I'm on. I think we need to have we need to give businesses opportunity to come here and tell us why they believe they'll make the community a better place.
Well, in sticking to just trying to keep us on track, it would seem that Mrs. Showmaker doesn't need a lot of time to review the entire ordinance. So to the manager, I would ask that you work into our agenda the next time that we can fit it in so that we can have an opportunity to re-review, based on a majority, what Mr. Howell would like us to review, and we'll revisit it again at the next available workshop meeting. Anyone have anything else on that? Did I miss anything? I want to try and be as fair and objective as I can about this to make sure that it's being handled appropriately. Mrs. Dalton, you're okay with that direction?
I'm okay with that direction.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Great.
Mr. Walsh?
No.
Okay. Well, majority still rules.
Oh, no.
All right. So we're moving along. On to 7.3, design standards, sidewalk dimensions.
Mayor, I also asked that that be put on. Apparently, the planning board had granted approval for the Sonic Restaurant on 9 and New Friendship Road, and when part of our design standard under the old manager was a requirement for 10 or 12-foot wide sidewalks, and apparently when Sonic went to the state, because it's on a state highway, the state said, 4 foot. We trump your town on state highways. So I think we need to amend the ordinance to fall in line with the state guidelines of 4 foot wide sidewalks, so that, I mean, Sonic was held up for about 4 or 5 months.
Oh, that's correct. The
Okay.
deputy mayor is correct. We have a letter from DOT that's reviewed the plans for that particular application, and prior to approving a permit, your plans must be revised as follows.
Can I ask a question? Does that apply to state roads? If we wanted in some new development to have it be 12-foot in some new development, we could do that, could we
That's
not?
correct. This is on state roads, like Route 9, 33.
So then are we looking to amend our ordinance so that 12-foot doesn't apply, we just comply with the state standard on state-controlled roadways? Is that the request?
That's the request.
what I would
But that's up to the governing body,
Was
but
that your intent,
that's
Mr.
the
Howell?
request.
Yes, Mayor, because I believe in the residential design standards, we ask for 5 foot, but every attorney and every engineer that sits over there says, well, Reese's says we only have to, and Reese's is one of those 4-letter words I can't
I
stand.
thought that was a peanut butter cup.
Yeah, well, you would have hoped, except
Okay.
not in that case.
Okay.
So we can ask for more, they don't have to, but with the 12-foot, we can ask for more, and the state says you can't have it.
So your request of the council is to introduce an amendment so that for state-controlled roadways, that we comply with what the state calls for.
Correct.
Okay, any other comments on this? This seems pretty simple.
That's, yeah.
Okay.
I agree with that. I just want to know, it's not clear to me that, do we have anything actually in writing from the state or an ordinance that says that it's a 4-foot minimum, a 4-foot maximum? Where does it
That
say
was in the
maximum?
backup.
Well, there's an April 23rd letter from the from the state of New Jersey DOT. Even though it's referencing just that one project, they show the sidewalk as 4 foot as per New Jersey DOT specifications.
I believe the night that Sonic had to come back,
I was not there.
you weren't there that night, at your planning board meeting. But I recall Mr. Cachero saying, yeah, we have to go that way.
Yep,
So I think we're all in agreement, you have your direction.
yes.
7-4, NJDOT, there's correspondence regarding a proposed access application for Route 9 and Northwoods Lane that would necessitate vacating the existing right turn ramp from Northwood Lane to Route 9 North.
Mayor?
Go right ahead.
Upon discussion among the professionals, our recommendation and to the council is that we request a meeting with the New Jersey DOT. They sent that letter, but it was a very short letter. They've offered to meet with us, and our recommendation is that we set up that meeting before you make any decision.
All right, anyone object to that?
No.
Does a member of
No.
the council want to participate in that meeting?
Yeah, but I'd like to comment on it now.
Go right ahead.
Why should we be giving up our highway access to anybody? I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Okay. Why don't we nominate Mr. Walsh to participate in that meeting?
Mr. Walsh, we're glad to accept that nomination, Mayor.
All right, so you'll report back to us after you have that meeting?
Yes, sir.
Okay. 7A5, conversation about regulating the size of pool cabanas and gazebos. So I would imagine somebody complained, and this has raised the issue. So what do you have for us, Mrs. Schlegel?
Okay, let me get to that point. I believe in your packet, you'll see that Ms. Texter has mentioned that the township ordinance doesn't provide any regulation concerning outside poolside cabanas on a residential property. So she has made a recommendation, and you can see the specifics there, that the township consider adoption of an ordinance that would provide for those accessory buildings, which would be a poolside cabana and gazebos.
What necessitated this? She just
Oh,
kind
I
of
was
stumbled
just gonna
across
say,
this? Or did somebody build a big giant gazebo in their yard and it blocked their neighbor's view?
You know,
Yeah.
I continue, maybe,
big government.
just after being here for 6 years, sometimes you just can't regulate stupidity. This is just... You have a comment, Mrs. Showmaker?
I'm not going to go to the stupidity point, but I will say that
What y'all thinking?
we have enough government in our face, and if this is not a fixed structure, like, is it you have to have a foundation or a foot or something, what else are they going to tell us we can't do on our property?
What's next?
I'm just
So it's a
bringing you the
recommendation.
recommendation of the department.
Okay.
It's certainly the pleasure of the council.
Mrs. Dalton?
It just surprises me that the materials we're receiving are saying that we don't have regulation of accessory structures.
We do.
I know, folks, I know.
All right.
I put in a swimming pool last year. I put in a pool house. Call it a pool house? It's a shed. I got a shed permit. We have requirements for sheds. If they're a certain size,
Come on.
they need a real foundation. They have to comply with setbacks. Their accessory structures have to comply with setbacks. I'm really uncomfortable with the gazebo idea. I mean, I bought a gazebo at Target for $400. It's a metal thing. Am I going to have a permit under this proposal? Would I have to go get somebody to come out and inspect where I put it?
So rather than belabor the point, it would appear that this measure is not being received favorably by a majority of the council. Do I have that right?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, so we're going to move on.
I deserve comment on that one, Mayor.
Okay, 7A6, outdoor gathering permits. The history on this, as we know, has been, there have been concerns in certain neighborhoods that events have taken place, whether they're called rodeos or large events. I can personally attest to the fact that I've gotten numerous phone calls, emails, letters, at all hours of the day and night by people who live in certain areas that their quality of life has been impacted. The council received a recommended ordinance that was not received favorably. We all felt it went way above and beyond what we thought was appropriate from a regulatory and an enforcement perspective, and so we agreed not to act upon it. And yet, at the last time we met, we did believe that some level of oversight was warranted when someone has a huge, giant event, and we are concerned about safety and noise and what have you. And so we directed the manager with the professional staff to come back with a more moderate set of objectives and recommendations so that when episodes like this come up, we've got some regulatory oversight without becoming the fun police, which we also don't want to be in the business of doing. So with that as a backdrop, Mrs. Schlegel, why don't you tell us what you're recommending or what you have for us?
Well, from the recommendation also of the chief, we're suggesting a temporary use permit that allows for short-term activities on private property with appropriate regulation that the uses be compatible with the surrounding community, and that we want to establish something that's really just going to prevent a dangerous situation from developing, as you said, and to maintain the quality of life standard within the neighboring area. Now, for example, it'll be to get a special use, a temporary use permit, you would need to, they would have to be sure that the venue or whatever has the capacity for that many people. Okay? There would be things like maybe to be sure that there's an entrance, a proper entrance and exit, that there's proper parking, that the buildings are safe. You know, those types of things. And that's really the direction.
How do we regulate, which to me seems fairly obvious, but I think it's been a challenge, and it's been unfair for our police department because I think they haven't been given the right regulatory tools, and we owe it to them. But how do we deal with a situation where there is alcohol being served, when there are all kind of cars parked in areas that aren't equipped for parking? How do we intend on dealing with that? Because I think people are well-intended, they go get their permit, and then they have their event, and then we find out that there's all kind of episodes and incidences and fights. And do we need any additional police enforcement, or is the chief comfortable that if we follow his direction, he's now got the appropriate capability to go in and take care of a situation?
Well, one of the samples that he had sent was an ordinance from Cherry Hill, and I don't know if you remember, but going back, because this has been an ongoing, as you very well know, this has been ongoing. But one of the ordinances that he had sent was a sample from Cherry Hill, and there was some like proof of liability insurances, and they, like I said, that he feels that we need to make sure that the buildings are safe, that all establishments must have adequate security on the premises during the hours of operation. So this is what I'd like to do is, if you don't have this, I would like to give you a copy of this. So I don't want to rush into this because it seems that we want to be sure, we want to get the input from the residents in the area, as well as the input from the residents that are perhaps having special events. So I think we need to, instead of, let's not rush into this, let's look at this. Let me give you another copy of this. Everyone can go through this. Maybe we'll bring the chief in, or Tom Connors from the police department, who really came up with some suggestions, because it didn't just pertain, I want to make this clear, I know that a lot of the emails that we've received, Mayor, and you know, you definitely can attest to this, in the phone calls that I know that you're receiving at home regarding this matter, it doesn't just pertain to those events. I want to make that clear, because I do have a report from the police department from 2007 of incidences that happened that were not at those venues, so I want to make that clear.
Mr.
There's some,
Slater,
we have some
wasn't
other
that-
areas in town which,
Wasn't there about 20 pages of reports in Freewood Acres at one place where the police officers were constantly over there and then running license plates, finding out cars were stolen, the cars were
there's
illegally
a
registered,
couple,
and...
we have a couple of places in Howell Township where we've had some incidences.
I believe there was a stabbing at the German-American
Right.
Club, and...
Right, so I just want to make that clear. So what you want to do is you want to kind of make something that's going to cover all those types of things, and I know you want to be careful about too much regulation.
Okay.
So I think we just need to,
So you're going to circulate to us a
Right.
sample Cherry Hill, and you'll bring someone in from the police department to go over it with us a little further.
right.
Okay.
Maybe our township, our barrister, or special counsel over there, maybe you can give us a couple ideas also in writing?
Quick question. I would like to know how Cherry Hill's demographics geographically compares to Howell Township. I think that if we're going to use an ordinance from that area, I think that we need to, I'm a apples to apples person. So I don't want us to go take something that doesn't go with our demographics or our geographic area. We have to be very careful of that, because I consider Howell Township a very rural area, and when you live in a rural area, there are certain things that you should have the parameters to do. So I think that this is, and I think that in all fairness to all residents, I don't want anyone, any particular agency or farm or whatever it may be, to not take this ordinance that we're trying to structure personal. That's why I think that we need to compare apples to apples, areas to areas, and make it global enough that we have teeth that protect the citizens that are having the event as well as the citizens that participate in the event. And I think that we have to be very cognizant of those particulars.
Let me say that they had just sent me a sample and saying that there needed to be changes. It was just giving an example of not a gathering permit, but a temporary use permit, which is two different things. The other thing I want to state with respect, for the public, with respect to the rodeos, which seem to come up at our meetings quite often, the activities that are held at a rodeo are protected under right to farm. People need to understand that. Those activities are protected under right to farm. The question that the police just want to make sure that there's safe, the parking is safe, the traffic, there's an easy way to get in and out. Other people aren't being infringed upon, the level of noise that's happening, those types of things. But the actual farm activities, I want to just make that clear, we cannot regulate those activities. Those activities are protected under right to farm.
This is just something off the top of my head. Is it legal, like if there's a gathering over X amount of people, that they have to hire a police officer?
No.
I'm just asking.
We don't have anything in place. Now, there are ordinances, not on our books, but there are sample ordinances of such things as that, where it's a gathering over a certain amount of people, you have to provide security and that type of thing. We don't have anything of that kind.
I know I have to hire security for my daughter's Sweet 16, or they will not allow me to have it there.
Just wait, you'll see.
What?
Where at?
It'll grow into that.
Where at? At your house?
No, at an establishment.
In Howell?
3 of them that I went to, I must hire 2 security guards if there's over 125 people, if it's a Sweet 16.
Do you have a reputation we need to know
No.
about?
But
These are reputable places.
is that...
I told them
Who would the PBA hire?
Yeah. I told them me and my family could police ourselves, believe me.
I think go ahead, Mrs. Dalton.
But Mr. Walsh, that's a private establishment is asking you to provide security
That's
because
their
they're
rules.
concerned, right?
That's their rules.
It's not the municipality.
Well, you don't
of-
know if it's a municipal law that requires the establishment to do that.
Hold on, Mrs. Dalton has the
I'm
floor.
asking if it's not the municipality of where, I mean, I have a very big concern, because you're not talking about having 125 people in your backyard, Mr. Walsh.
Why not?
Well, nobody's going to ask you to put security in your backyard if you have
Mrs.
125 people.
Waltman, didn't you see easy money?
Unless this ordinance gets passed.
I just, not to interrupt, but I think your comment is a valid comment. I think that we have to be very careful on what we're crafting, because I know probably everyone in this room has passed a home on a Saturday or a Sunday, or a baseball field, or the school, where there are cars absolutely everywhere, along the roads, in driveways, blocking driveways, on the corner, everywhere. So I think that we need to be very, very careful. I'm going to go back to the dog ordinance several years ago. That's all I'm going to say. So we need to be very careful on what we're doing here.
I think we have our direction, which was we want to proceed judiciously and carefully. We've asked Governor Bennett's office to look at it and give us some best practices, recommendations about things that he's seen other communities do, and you'll prepare something, Mrs. Schlegel, and we'll have a meeting here with the police.
Yes.
Agreed?
Yes.
All right, we're going to take a 5-minute recess, and we'll be back. All right, we're going to reconvene the meeting to order. Just need everyone's attention, please, folks. All right, we are at 7A7. This is the Lake Louise and Price property. I had asked that this be put on the docket. We have not really talked about what the municipality's intentions are with respect to Lake Louise and the Price properties, and so I don't necessarily expect us tonight to get into a lot of detail, but I've received some inquiries from residents who want to use these properties or want to know what our intentions are with them. Just, folks, if you could just do us a favor, if you need to have a conversation, we just ask you to take it outside, please.
24 residents want to talk.
Lake Louise, Price property, we have not really given any direction to the administration. So, Mrs. Schlegel, do you have any comments on this and what your plans or thoughts have been?
Well, I don't have any plans, but obviously I just wanted to update you on what the situation is. For example, we'll start with Lake Louise. We really do not have there's no safe access to Lake Louise, so I want you to understand that there is a small piece with a 200-foot frontage that we did not acquire, okay, when we acquired the rest. So if we were looking for long-term for an access point, that would be it. So that would be something that at the direction of the governing body would be looking at purchasing that piece. We can possibly try to have an access off of Lane's Pond, but then we have issues of there's wetlands, floodplain, so there would be a lot of permitting that would need to happen. So right now there is no access. We just own the land, but we don't have access to it.
My recollection, I think maybe only Mrs. Showmaker and I were on the council at the time, but when this came up, there was a strategic reason why we were encouraged to buy this property. And it had something to do with its connectivity to adjacent properties that we owned or were going to be owning.
Well, originally, I believe what it was, and maybe Mr. Nunziata could help me out here, but I believe what it was is that we were going from Echo Lake, okay, and down to Lake Louise, that we would own all that contiguous land. Is that right?
That's primarily correct. The Beschlin actually was the owner of the property. He owned the lake, and he owned probably about 30 or 40 lots in some capacity. And when he had passed, it was an opportunity for us to actually get the property. We actually acquired it in about October of 2004. So we've had it about almost 4 years now.
And I know that correspondence, I believe, Mayor, that you received where the sign was located, and that we do not own that piece. That is the homeowners association.
So if a resident-
That's the 200-foot piece
Okay.
that I was speaking to you about.
Gotcha. So if a resident wanted to do something at Lake Louise, they wanted to have a picnic, they could go there this weekend and put down a picnic blanket and use the property that we do own?
Yes.
Or could they not?
They could.
And I guess my question is, from a customer service perspective, how would our residents know that that property is available for them to use?
Well, I think right now the reason that we don't have it as a public facility is because we don't have safe access. And we certainly don't want to send anyone out there.
Mayor, also, Mrs. Schlegel, I don't even believe there's any place to park. I think when people go there to fish, they park on the side of the road.
Right, there is
on
not.
the dam.
That's correct.
So
And do we ever figure out yet who owns the dam?
We own the dam, the county owns the culvert.
Okay.
So is there any interest on the part of the council to come up, maybe this goes to the Rec Advisory Committee? Is there something that we can do with this from a passive perspective, or do we just kind of want to own it and leave it in the inventory?
I think that's a very good suggestion, Mayor, to, you know, send a bunch of information that we do have over the Rec Advisory Committee and see what they come up with.
Then with respect to the Price property, as the deputy mayor had mentioned, we just lost the house that was on the property to a fire. There's an existing pole barn on the piece that is on the north side of Locust. That piece is a 22-acre piece. And then on the south side of Locust, the piece that is actually contiguous to Echo Lake, I believe, is about 16 and a half acres. And there doesn't appear to be any, well, on the piece on the north side of Locust, there definitely doesn't appear to be any environmental issues. And on the south side of Locust, the piece that's contiguous to Echo Lake, we really haven't done an environmental assessment, but it appears that that's not environmentally.
So is it the pleasure of the council to send some paperwork to the Rec Advisory about both Price and Lake Louise to determine its passive recreational use and get some recommendations?
It is deed restricted too, because the money that was used to purchase those properties were both through Monmouth County Open Space Fund and Green Acres, so it is deed restricted, so make that clear.
Everyone agree with that recommendation?
Yep.
Mrs. Showmaker?
What's wrong with just having open space?
I don't think there's anything wrong with it. At the time we had the lake, we wanted people to be able to fish.
Right.
And so they can't get to it, I guess, is the concern. And so people don't even know that it's there for them because we haven't done anything to tell people, hey, guess what, we own it. Well, that was my concern, was we have people
For Lake
looking
Louise, right.
for Lake Louise. I don't disagree with it. It just could be a walking trail. But how would I know as a resident that that isn't your property and I could go take the Boy Scouts on a hike there? So I just think we need to do a better job in communicating to people that we have these beautiful amenities that the taxpayers paid for. Let's make sure people know them and they're available to use. That's the only reason I brought it up.
And the other issue being, I guess, also, Mayor, is that it still has that sign in that one section where the only area to park is, that still says
Private property.
Lake Louise Homeowners Association. Keep out.
We don't own that property.
Right, that would be the only part where you could park.
That you could park. Okay. So we're going to send it to Rec Advisory and have them look at it.
Actually, that may be something that the Rec Advisory may suggest, that we do look for a Green Acres grant or Monmouth County Open Space grant to obtain that property.
Okay. So you'll share that with them, please.
Yes.
7A8, accessory buildings and structures. We're to discuss proposed ordinances to provide regulations for the size and height of accessory buildings and structures. Go ahead, Mrs. Schlegel.
Our Director of Land Use has said that at the present time, the land use ordinance does not provide any size limitation or height limitation for storage sheds, detached accessory garages, or barns. And she is making the recommendation that's in your packet there.
Okay. Comments from the council?
Now, there is ordinances on the books, correct? They're just not specific? Or there's nothing on the books?
She's saying that it does not provide any size limitation or height limitation for storage
Folks,
sheds,
hold on one second. Keep going, Mrs. Schlegel.
for storage sheds, detached accessory garages, or barns.
All right, Mayor, I think the only thing that it does say, and Mr. Nunziato could probably address this better than I, but it just gives us guidelines for setbacks. It doesn't say that you can't put a 35-foot high shed in your backyard. The only differences are, if it's less than 99 square feet, it doesn't have to have a foundation. If it's more than 100 square feet, it has to have a foundation, but it could be 10,000 square feet. There's no limitation.
There's general guidelines as far as, for instance, in certain zones, the height equals a setback. In other zones, it has to meet a certain setback size. But for instance, whether it's 1 story, 2 stories, 20 stories, unless there's an actual height restriction for that zone, some people will, like, say, maybe a 60 by 100 pole barn in a certain size lot may be excessive. I think that's where she's trying to look at, that there's really no regulation as to lot size versus an accessory structure size.
Right, and isn't that
That
the
was
same
her
place she
point
was
with
trying to go with the pool
that's-
house too?
Exactly. That's what she was trying to say with the cabanas and the gazebos.
So if I read her memo correct, what it says here is, she's being specific. There is no size limitation or height limitations for storage sheds, detached accessory garages, or barns.
That's correct.
Okay. The only concern I have is, if you live on a farm and you got a big piece of property, why should we tell you how big your barn can be? And, I mean, this is like way over the top in terms of poking in somebody's business.
Well, I think she talks about the size of the properties.
One of the other things too, I believe, what she's looking at is either a land use certificate from her as the land use officer, or it's actually perhaps a site plan for the board. I think that's a distinction she's going to try to make, where if you exceed a certain size or area, then it would be something that she would not want to do as land use officer. She would rather it go to the board.
Is there a way this can just be applied to properties that aren't farmland assessed? I mean, if you live in a neighborhood and you got a neighbor right next to you and you add some big giant garage, I could see how maybe that would be a problem. But if you're living on a 27-acre farm and you got a couple more horses or whatever the case may be, why do we want to be involved in how big their barn
Well, I
is?
think what drove this is, it's not what you're talking about. It's not, what drove her suggestion is these accessory buildings in these residential areas. That's where the problem is. So I would imagine that we could put something like that in an ordinance. Is that correct?
Yes.
So give us an example of an accessory building in somebody's neighborhood.
Okay, for example, I'm going to just go back to, let's go back to the pool cabana for a minute.
Don't disagree.
Okay, in a residential area, somebody's putting in a pool cabana. Well, pool cabana to you may be one thing. To me, it may be 3 stories, flat screen, and a bar.
And what's the
Okay?
matter with that?
No, but all I'm trying to say is that I think that's where she was going with the accessory buildings in a residential area.
I need somewhere to sleep when my wife throws me out.
All right, I'm scratching my head. Let's start for comments. Mrs. Dalton, what are your comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, several. I have a couple of concerns about the size of the sheds that are being proposed. I think that they are too small. This proposal wants to limit sheds to no more than 180 square feet, 1 story. Well, 180 square feet, I mean, a 12 by 16 shed, which is a very common shed. It's the one I purchased and got a permit for to put in my home, is 192 square feet. That's not excessive. It's not unreasonable. So I have a concern about that. I have a concern with limiting the number on a single-family residential property larger than 60,000 square feet to no more than 2 sheds. What if someone has 6 acres versus an acre and a half? I think that's a big difference. Again, I am really concerned about just this constant effort to overregulate people. I mean, people have to use common sense. I mean, I have a shed, I got a shed permit, I went out, I got specifications. I believe I was told no greater than 12 feet. I don't know why, I didn't look to see if the ordinance said that. I complied with what I was told to do. I think perhaps if we're looking at some kind of restrictions, maybe we need to define accessory building in a way that an accessory building cannot exceed the size of the principal structure on the property, or cannot exceed it by a certain amount, with the exception, of course, of barns, which may actually, in a real farming use, be greater than the principal structure. Just going on, in the section concerning garages, I think it goes way far into an area we shouldn't be over-regulating concerning parking of trailers on streets. I don't know, when I read this, where any landscapers are going to park while they're mowing people's grass, because this ordinance would restrict them from parking on the street in my neighborhood if they mow the grass. Pole barns and barns, way concerned about the violations of the Right to Farm Act. I have been a big advocate. I think I have maintained this position for the whole time I've been up here, that just because one is not assessed for farmland assessment, perhaps they choose to pay full freight, which is a good thing for us. Perhaps their property is too small. That doesn't mean they don't have a farm. It doesn't mean they don't have rights under the Right to Farm Act. Am I correct about that, Mr. Bennett? Yes. So this really goes far in restricting persons who are engaging in farming activity on properties that are not assessed. So those are all the comments I have right now. If there are extreme examples out there where somebody built a 2,800 square foot pool house with a bar and a game room and bathrooms.
Give us their address, we'd like to go pay them a visit.
But I mean, I think we can deal with that. It was my impression, and evidently I was mistaken, that you couldn't put a bathroom in a shed or a pool house. I didn't know you could, and maybe that's something we want to talk about. But those are my comments. I'm not in favor of moving
Mrs.
forward.
Schulmaker, do you have anything to add? Okay. Mr. Walsh, anything to add?
Yeah, I did see something here that struck me as a little funny. I do remember a resident coming before us once before and saying somebody put their 6 pigs right on their property line with the manure. I mean, I don't think that's appropriate though either. Where they did it on purpose, put it right on the property line of the neighbor, so the neighbor had to deal with the smell all the time. If something could be done about that, where you could use common sense to be reasonable. But I remember that resident coming here and complaining. I kind of felt for the guy. I mean, I don't know what would have happened if they put those 6 pigs next to my property line.
I know, it would have been a barbecue.
Yeah, I do enjoy pulled pork. No, but I want to be very careful of over-regulating.
I have DirecTV at home, and next year I'm not going to have Channel 77, because this is just way too funny.
I'd like to introduce an ordinance that as any former public official gets a lifetime supply of DVDs from the township meeting. Can we get a vote on that?
Okay.
So the consensus is that we're going to pull this.
The consensus is
Thank you.
there's no interest in this. Okay. Moving right along.
Public hearing.
We have some unfinished business. We will be acting on September 23rd with regard to 8A1. I don't think there's any reason to discuss that further. With respect to 8A2, we're going to be talking again on the 23rd. We have a public hearing and adoption with respect to the sale of certain properties. And
Can I just
go right ahead. Yep.
Is that the property on Route 34 that we were in negotiations with for a while?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Everything's correct?
Are there any new wrinkles?
Anything new that we don't know about?
No.
Good. All right, new
Mr.
business.
Mayor, I
Go right
have
ahead.
2 comments, and you know what, I was just in one of those moods. Maybe it's just what's going on politically these days. I'm just wanting to cut fat and correct things. And I know there is a typo in 8A1,
We've already handled that.
okay? And I have a concern, maybe Mr. Bennett can explain to me on 8A2. The property is for sale for the bidder in excess of $30,000. So does that mean if the bidder comes and bids $30,000, they get the property? Because it seems a little ambiguous to me, and I wouldn't want us to screw it up over a penny.
I read it as well. It does say in excess.
It says in excess of $30,000.
It's got to be 30,001 cent out of it. Right, when you read, we'll review the ordinance.
Okay.
We will recheck that.
So you'll have the
ordinance.
attorney's office re-review it.
Yes.
His office didn't prepare it, so he'll take a look at it for us.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Would that, Governor Bennett, would that constitute a substantive change? Because this has already been introduced, it's,
Between 30,000 and 30,001 cents. I'd be okay with that.
good,
I don't know.
Read it like that.
okay.
I don't know
All right,
about that.
and we're going to introduce,
Penny is substantive, you know?
well, you're calling the shots on that one, so.
so.
Okay, good. All right, and we do have 9A1, we're going to be introducing on the 23rd, public records Oprah request fees. Have we, and forgive me, I just might not recall, when did we workshop that?
We didn't.
I think we are tonight.
I haven't seen it yet.
Me either.
Yeah,
I didn't see it for discussion, 9A1. We're
Right.
going to introduce it on the 23rd. So are we going to workshop and review that for debate and comments? Or is this a state law? That's okay. 9A1 says public records. We're scheduled to introduce on the 23rd. We haven't workshopped it yet, though.
Tonight is your workshop.
I understand that, but it wasn't under, like, in the agenda, it wasn't under discussion. So this is another item to be discussed.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay, so let's have a conversation. We're being requested to pass an ordinance, introduce an ordinance on the 23rd regarding public records and Oprah requests. Mrs. Schlegel, you want to give us the overview?
Yes, sir. The state is recommending that we need to have the Oprah fees on the books established by ordinance. And the township does not have it by ordinance.
So this is a formality, not a change of any substance to our policies and procedures?
I believe are the fees changing? This came from the clerk's office, I don't have the, no, we're just formalizing it by ordinance.
Where do we get our fees? Where does one go to figure out what someone has to
The
pay?
state sets
New
those
Jersey
fees.
state statute.
So it's by statute?
Yes.
So this is just by ordinance adopting what the state statute says?
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
The state's telling us we have to have an ordinance.
I'm
We
reading
don't
on
have-
page 2 of the ordinance, and there's some handwritten notes that says up to $23.50.
Not of.
Is that new, or is that, again, pursuant to the state?
That figure can range from the way Mr. Davis explained to us in workshop. That figure can have a range to it, and it was recommended by the person at the state. that he talked to.
Would you just pull the mic?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That amount was, is within a range as to what the individual from the state advised him. It can be from a lower figure to a higher figure. I think it's $30 was the higher, and something lower. But you can only actually charge the actual cost of doing it. So if someone is preparing it, and their hourly rate is less, you can only charge the lesser amount. So it's either the lesser amount or the $23 dollars. That's the way Mr. Davis explained it.
So we're not really, Mrs. Woolman, since you're here, representative of the clerk's office, we're not changing any fees, we're not amending anything, we're just codifying. Great, okay. Anyone have any comments or problems with that?
No.
So then we'll introduce this on the 23rd. Okay. I don't believe from an agenda perspective, Mrs. Schlegel, is there anything else before we go into a hearing of citizens that you need us to take action on this evening?
No, sir, I believe that's it.
Okay? All right, we're going to, yes, Governor.
I'm back on this, on the ordinance on the sale of the property. I'm reading it quickly. Where's that, over $1?
No, it says we will award the sale of the property to the bidder who bids an amount in excess of $30,000. It's my understanding the only interested party in purchasing this property has been in front of this body and appeared publicly, and it's my understanding that the agreement is they're going to bid on this property for $30,000. But if you read that ordinance, if they bid $30,000, that's not an amount in excess of $30,000.
Okay.
So they either need to bid $30,000 and a penny, or the ordinance needs to say $30,000 or more. I mean, I
thought it said minimum.
it doesn't say minimum. If it said minimum, it would be okay. It says an amount in excess of.
It does. I saw it as well.
And I can tell you now, from being in on those negotiations, we ain't getting a penny more out of that person.
Literally.
We're not.
All right, so that can be corrected.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes.
You're okay with that now?
You didn't want to pay a nickel.
Okay, at this time, we're going to open up the meeting to members of the public. We have a number of folks who want to speak tonight, so I'm going to just remind everyone, out of respect to your fellow neighbor, we do have a 5-minute rule that we're asking folks to comply with. So when you get up, just hold on, folks. When you get up, just please give us your name and address for the record. Some of you filled in how we can help you. If you haven't filled it in, let us know. But we are going to attempt to make sure we stick to our provisions so everyone has an opportunity to be heard. The time is now 10:30. So the first person whose name is on the list says here Mark Stewart. Address is Brick Township. Mark Stewart. Are you here, Mr. Stewart? Okay, Mr. Stewart is not here. What's that? Okay. Next person on the list, it says Joe Parente. Mr. Parente, are you here? Mr. Parente? Didn't think so. Okay. We do have the two gentlemen from the Bricktown MUA. They've already spoken. The next person, Gene and Gabe Verdoni from West Farms Road. Come on up, folks. Good to see you. Welcome. Make yourselves comfortable.
I need help. That's why I'm with them.
You brought your better half, did you?
Yes.
All right, folks, just for the record, introduce yourselves, please, name and address.
I'm Jean Verdoni.
Welcome.
I live at 41 West Farms Road, next door to the Radaman Farm, which is one of the farms that is having the rodeo. We have a 50-foot buffer between us. Okay. We have a 50-foot buffer between us and the farm. It's 50 feet wide and it goes back maybe approximately 500 feet. They have removed every tree on this buffer, plus the fact that they have brought in fill, built it up. The fill is, has mixed concrete and other debris in it. Now, that's caused a lot of problems for us. I mean, number one, it's cut down the buffer that we have there. Practically, can't tell you how many trees have been taken down along this whole buffer. They have knowingly taken down those trees. They were notified by the code enforcer that that was our property. They still continue to take down the trees. They had put up a fence, which since then they have taken down, on our property to increase the area for their rodeo. I can't see why Howell Township is allowing them to continue with these rodeos without correcting that problem. They've gotten several summonses and from the code enforcer, and nothing has been done about replacing these trees. They're supposed to replace the trees. And why they're continuing to have why the township is allowing them to continue with these rodeos without correcting that problem.
Well, let's hold right there. Mrs. Schlegel, are you aware of this? Is your office aware of this?
No, I am not, sir. This is the first that I've been notified regarding the buffer.
All right, so will your office look into these apparent violations?
I certainly will.
We certainly have.
Excuse me, let me talk just for a second, please. Look it. This is the
And
first.
I know you.
Oh,
but
my
for the
name is
record-
Gabriel Verdoni. I don't complain with people, but to abuse the property and knowingly continue to abuse it, it's just not right. As far as the rodeo goes, they knocked down this buffer which actually muffled the sound from the music, or what they were playing there. It's not there. If I went on to property to knock down a buffer zone, I'd be fine like this. Here this guy's getting a free ticket. It's 50 foot deep by 500 foot long. And the tree stumps are still there. He pushed them from the end of my property to the beginning of his property. with 50 garbage bags next to it that's acting like a spiteful thing. That's why I'm down here and getting annoyed. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be like that. I mean, I'm 80 years old, I'm not a kid.
You're entitled to be
come down
frustrated.
here and to express myself. I think it's only right.
I agree with you. Mrs. Schlegel, will your office have someone please get back to Jean and Gabe tomorrow with an update on these summonses and what we can do to help them? If there's been a violation in a buffer, that's a problem. And so we'll do that?
Yes, sir.
All right, we'll get back to you folks
Fine.
tomorrow with a phone call.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate
Yes,
your
sir.
coming out.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
You mind if I take a drive over there tomorrow?
Excuse me, Bob?
Do you mind if I take a drive over there tomorrow?
No, come in my driveway. Have coffee with me.
What time? I got a meeting at 9. How about 9:30?
That's fine.
I'll throw the other bum out by 9:15.
Thank
There
you.
go.
Thank you very much.
folks. We appreciate your help in coming out. Okay, next person is Bob Vincent. Mr. Vincent, welcome.
Nice to meet you folks for the first time. Bob
Welcome.
Vincent, 53 West Farms Road. Well, seems we have a multitude of dramas taking place at our little hamlet on West Farms Road. Mine is simple. Thankfully, I'll be less than 5 minutes. We got a problem with noise. And I want to preface that by saying I have no personal issues with any of the people on the block here. I happen to think that Juan and Joyce should pursue whatever business ideals they wish. But, you know, when I see my sugar bowl dancing across my kitchen table without me touching it, I think I got a problem. So I just thought that maybe this is something we could solve without going all, you know, wacky here. And, you know, addressing folks on a personal level and seeing if we can just sort of work on this. I don't know what the decibel level rules are, noise ordinances. I don't know how they work. I know there's a curfew, 10 o'clock curfew.
10 or 11,
yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly
I think it's 10.
acceptable.
Most residents start calling me at 10:01 to tell me that the music is still going on.
While you're at it, I need your...
It's in the book.
No, but actually, you know, the thing is, they're good people, they're nice people. I think they should do what they want to do, but, you know, it's a bit oppressive, and, hey, you want to go outside and have a barbecue, enjoy yourself, you know, maybe drink a beer or that, and, you know, it's loud, and I have to say it's loud, and I'm really here for a particular reason. I don't want my neighbors to be portrayed as disgruntled knuckleheads. You know, they are not. They have a legitimate cause here with the noise, and that's all I'm addressing here at this time is the noise. You know, as you can see, there's other stuff going on, but that doesn't concern me because I like all my neighbors. They're good people, but the noise is a factor here. We got a brass band here that, you know, I've never seen a brass band that actually needs amplifiers, but you know, whatever. But I just think it's something that needs to be addressed, and hopefully we can deal with this on a nice human level. Did we do that under 5 minutes?
You did great.
That's it. That's it for me.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Dixell, welcome, Mrs. Dixell. Come on up.
Good evening, everybody. Barbara Dixell, The Villages.
Hello, Mrs. Dixell.
I have a whole bunch of things, and I'm going to try and be quickly, please. Just bear with me.
5, 4, 3.
Bobby, I will try. Okay,
How can we go,
regarding the
Mrs.
water. I know you gave direction to the lawyers to be the objectors for the township at the hearings. Have the hearings started? Are the lawyers attending the hearings on behalf of Howell Township and the villages? I need to know, because I've gotten nothing from anybody.
I have not received an update from Township Attorney, but I will find out tomorrow and get back to Mrs. Dixell on that matter.
I would like to know
Good.
what the status of any hearings are.
We'd like to know it as well,
Yeah,
so
okay.
we'll
I
get back to
have
you.
given Mrs. Schlegel reams full of information and things I've pulled off the net. I hope all you people have seen it all and read it all. It's all very interesting.
Okay, good.
Okay, with regard to the water, I see the gentlemen were here tonight from Brick Utilities. I'm asking the township, I'm begging the township, please, if there's any way that anybody can do anything for the villages to get us into
Brick Utilities, I don't know how to, we wouldn't know how to thank you enough. I get calls every day from people in the villages. Hold on, everybody. I get calls from villages every day. I have people saying that they can't pay their food, they can't eat, they can't pay their medical. They're paying water bills per quarter of about $250, $260, for 25,000 gallons of water. They call the water company, they come out, they test the little black thing on the side of the building. It's fine. No, it's not fine. Something's not working right. Tell me two old people in their 80s and 90s are using 25,000 gallons of water a quarter. I don't think so. And I'm okay, I had my water tested again, as I have done twice before, but this time I had every faucet in my house tested separately. I think I've paid a bona fide analytical testing service in the area at least $1,000 over the last couple of years. Okay, now the DEP level is 80. So one of my faucets came out 72 out of 80. You know how awful, disgusting, terrible that stuff tastes. 66, 62 out of 80. This is bad news. It's chloroform, it's bromodichloromethane, and dibromochloromethane, and it's all carcinogenic. Now, if I remember correctly, does Jersey American's water come from the Cohansey Aquifer? I somehow...
I don't know.
I don't know. I somehow seem, I'm going to go home and read some of the water stuff. I have a feeling that some of it comes from the Cohansey Aquifer, and if they're not using it because it's no good, then maybe Jersey American shouldn't be using it if they are. But like I say, I'm begging you people. I'm giving out phone numbers for people who call me. I'm giving out Senator Singer. I'm giving out manager's office. I gave out Chris Smith. And by the way, a resident or two from the villages who did call Chris Smith called me back very upset. He told these people it's not in his jurisdiction that they should go call Senator Singer.
Well, but that's true.
You know what? If we elected him, what is he elected for? He's elected to help us.
But Mrs. Dixell, I know you know. In fairness, Congressman Smith he has no authority, he has no jurisdiction.
He can write a letter, just like Senator Singer can, like anybody else can, or try helping. He went to Russia to help somebody. Let him come help the villages.
And God bless him for doing
yes,
that.
Yes, God bless him for doing it. And you did get a letter of mine that I said maybe this council should honor the man for going and helping to, and not for political reasons at all. I said for his bravery and humanitarian effort on behalf of this family and anybody else, other kids, I said to please honor him, and I did that. I gave that to the manager's office a week or two ago.
And we did get a copy, I did get a copy of that letter, by the way, Mrs. Dixell, you saying that, okay?
I wanted to say that.
Mayor, that's been 5 minutes.
Well, I'm sorry.
All right, Mrs. Dixell, wrap it up for us.
Okay, fine. Wawa, north and south. Gas prices are different in both gas stations. Why?
Mrs. Dixell,
well, I don't know. You people regulate stuff around here.
we don't regulate. We don't regulate the gas price. So we can't help you on that one.
I mean, I think it's ridiculous.
All right. Chris Smith could help you on that one.
Chris Smith can help you with that
one. Give him the oil, not the water. All right. Thank you very much, Mrs. Dixell. Next up.
Hold on. Grandview Cable. Now, again, at one meeting, I think I remember hearing you say you'd be willing to give Grandview a copy of the DVD or something. The people in the villages who have Grandview Cable don't have, not very many people in the villages, the elder people have computers and things like that they can do. So if they can get to see somebody and get to see how their government works, I've been up here many times.
We are going to work on that, as you heard us say before. But in fairness, Mrs. Dixell, we got a whole bunch of folks that are really waiting to be heard. So we're gonna go on. Jack and Jody Brennan. But you can come up separately or together. Okay.
If anybody can call this company, anybody that can do some kind of a deal for us for the villages. No, Jerry's working. I don't care. I'm responsible. I'm the county committee woman. I'm responsible for 1,000 people, and so is my board. And I'll do anything I can to help these people be able to eat. So I'm begging you people, do what you can.
All right.
We need to get out of American water. And not only will they throw a champagne party to get rid of me, but I'll throw a champagne party
Mrs.
to get
Dixell,
out.
I might throw the champagne party.
That's
We're only kidding, Mrs. Dixell, thank you. In fairness to Mr. Brannon, it's his time, so good evening, sir, welcome.
Thank you. Jack Brannon, 16 Woodland Drive. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Couple things. The hotel ordinance, kitchenettes. My stance, honestly, is why bother with it? I say put it up to have the whole ordinance rescinded at this point. I was with this when this whole thing started 4 or 5 years ago. In my opinion, it was a spot ordinance done for a builder. All right, period. And I think let it go in front of the Zoning Board of Adjustment and stand on its merits. If they say it should go there, it should go there. If they don't, it doesn't. It's just that simple. And I tell you what, I think I speak for a lot of people here that feel the same way. There are other provisions, all right? Height ordinances would apply, setbacks would apply, everything else would apply. And I just, like I said, I think you're going way beyond what needs to be done at this point. Second thing is on 7A4, the acceleration ramp coming off of Northwoods Place onto Route 9. Why in God's green earth would you allow something to be dissolved for a builder, all right, to come in? You're setting a very bad precedence on this. If you do it here, they can do it all the way up and down Route 9, because once you do it, it's on the books, all right? You're allowing it to be done, and I tell you what, there's many other parcels that, you know, want to be built. There's something being proposed right now, just down the street, okay? That is another complex. It's not a hotel. It's supposed to be a retirement community. They have an acceleration ramp. They're going to be using a parking lot to cut through to get onto Route 9. All right, so if you're going to dissolve this or allow the state to dissolve this, they can go right after that as well. All right, so I think you're making a huge mistake if you agree to allow the state to dissolve this. The only reason they want to dissolve it is to build on that piece of property, period. All right, I know it's been going around with wetlands and everything else in there. If it's a non-buildable piece of property, hey, that's the owner's problem. It's not mine. All right, it's not the people who live in that neighborhood. I looked at what's down at planning right now for this, all right? They want to put 3 high turnover restaurants on there as well as the hotel. If you look at their own study that's sitting down there, it says, where is it? Rush hour trips peaking at 358 street hour trips. So you divide that in half. You know how Route 9 is congested now. It's not only coming onto Northwoods Place, because that's going to be the exiting for this complex, if it's allowed to be done, but anybody who wants to get to the complex coming Route 9 south will have to make the jug handle at Stanley. Do you know what's going to happen to those people trying to get into their neighborhood? They're not going to be able to get in their neighborhood either at that point. It's going to back all the way down. It's going to go, God's sakes, I don't even know how far back it's going to back up on Route 9. All right, this is supposed to be during rush hour and peak hour. You know, if like I said, let us stand on its merits at the zoning board, right? I just don't see why a piece of land that has so many issues with it, they keep coming back over and over and over again with different plot plans to build something there. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Brannon, thank you for your comments. Mrs. Brannon, did you also want to be recognized? Okay.
Come on, Jody.
Next up is Anthony Esposito. Mr. Esposito. He's gone, okay. Mr. Russ Boland. Mr. Boland, welcome. Good evening, sir. Hello, Mr. Boland, welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Russ Boland, 165 Belmar Boulevard. Questions. A lot of people are wondering what the status is of the Elon situation. That was pulled last meeting and said it'd be reintroduced. Is there a timeline on that?
Mrs. Schlegel, where are we with respect to the corrections on Elon? Mr. Bowen's question is, what's the timeline in terms of next steps?
I'll have to check with the township attorney.
Okay. Okay.
I believe it said that announcement was made at the last meeting that was pulled due to a typo. Why wouldn't that just be immediately fixed and reintroduced and carried through to finality. It's a lot of people are left hanging, and they'd like to get this.
Actually, it wasn't the township attorney, but I believe it's the co-attorney. I have to speak with the co-attorney.
It is.
And I don't believe it was a typo.
ARE2, when it said ARE6 type of thing.
Would you call that a typo?
Yeah, that was
I mean,
discussed as a
I wouldn't personally
It was
call
technical,
that.
it was a technical error.
I think there were some technical problems.
Second thing, the hotel ordinance. I respect all your opinions. Mayor, you said you think it's good to have a framework to provide some guidance if a hotel comes to town instead of leaving it wide open for a zoning board to do anything they want. But I trust in the judgment of the people in the zoning board not to permit some monstrosity to be built that's going to affect people's lives. I would urge the council as a whole to yank that as a permitted use, just to repeal that. This current situation that's coming about with the Northwoods place looks to be a disaster in the making.
I agree with you, Mr. Bowling.
Look at the traffic. Compare that intersection to the Lanes Mills situation.
Lanes Mills. What's that, down
Lowe's,
Walmart?
just, I can see this, that 7 cars at a time can cross the highway with the timing of the lights. It's just a disaster. Besides that, it will destroy the value of the homes in that neighborhood. We're in a tough real estate market now, and those people's homes are going to be they'll suffer a loss of equity because of that in their backyard. The increase in ratables from the hotel and the 3 restaurants, how much does that go beyond offsetting the loss in value of the homes in the surrounding neighborhood? I urge you to repeal that. Third thing, last meeting I brought to your attention the situation about the RAC zoning on West Farms Road. And I believe you all indicated that was going to be looked into. Has anyone researched that?
We have. You were right, and it's being corrected.
Okay. And the final thing I want to mention, that discussion of mine last meeting disappeared from the televised portion of the meeting. There was a 33-minute and 12-second gap in the TV program.
What?
Yeah, we got a memo. There, he and 4 other ones, I believe, or 5.
I believe there were three speakers that were not recorded at the last meeting. It is in the official minutes of the meeting, but the
televised
part-time, there was a problem. They shut the tape off, didn't realize it was off, turned it back on, and 3 speakers were missing from that.
Okay.
Can I ask something? So are there written minutes where everything was?
Actually, I think what we're going to do is just do the public session verbatim,
Could we please
because
do
the
that?
residents won't, you won't be able to see what was said,
So we'll do
actually.
verbatim
We'll
on
do
those.
verbatim on the public
Okay,
session
so they'll be available
only for that
verbatim.
meeting.
I had inquired what happened, and I requested a copy of the DVD of the meeting, and I was told that would be an unedited DVD, that what happens is the meeting is recorded, and then someone in the IT department cuts out the breaks, so there's not a lot of dead space. So I asked for a copy of the original DVD, and what I got was the same as what was broadcast. I then asked for a copy of the audio record that the clerk's office made, and I compared it, and that's what I determined is a 33-minute and 12-second gap. And I just wondered why somebody turned the recorder off before I started speaking. That seems to be a far more far more worthy of investigation than Mr. Walsh's name disappearing from a business card.
Mr. Boland and Mr. Mayor.
I'll leave you with that.
Mayor, Mr. Boland, please keep your
Every
seat.
one of us want to respond
I
to that.
believe the reason that the tape was shut off was because after Mrs. Smith was speaking, we took a break.
Yes.
The recording device was shut off for that break, and the difficulty arose as we came back from that break.
Oh, he didn't turn it back on.
Mr. Bowen, I
Like,
read your
he was
comments
in the room.
concerning Mr. Walsh, and I think it kind of struck me as pretty cavalier of you to say that Mr. Walsh was wasting the council's time with the issue with the Historical Society flyer. Is that the tact that you would take any time that you thought residents' funds were being used in an inappropriate manner?
I don't know, I just think...
I'm asking, I would like you to answer that question.
if there's some true malfeasance here, yes, but I understand.
Well, how will we know
The
if there's
Historical
malfeasance
Society
if it's not
newsletter-
investigated, Mr.
I understand
Bowman?
this is Historical
Listen,
Society
it's,
newsletter is.
hold on, it's okay. Thank you for the cheap shot, God bless you. Have a nice evening.
Mr. Mayor, I got to respond. I think I can speak for all five of us up here. Not one of us, I couldn't even tell you who's upstairs right now recording this meeting. And not a single one of us would do anything to interfere with the recording of this meeting. And I am offended, and other people can get up here and demand apologies all the time for insults. That's an insult to me, Mr. Boland, and to everybody else up here, for you to insinuate that any one of us would have something to do with that. I agree with you tonight. You're absolutely right on that hotel ordinance, and I supported introducing an ordinance to rescind it. And so did Mr. Walsh. And Mr. Walsh has been supporting an ordinance to get rid of it since he got on this council, since he was up here all by himself. I might add that you need to check the record of the planning board minutes on the hotel ordinance, Mr. Bowen, because I have a feeling you'd be quite surprised at what your position was when you were on the planning board.
I had to vote to approve the consistency review. We weren't voting to approve the ordinance. That's your jurisdiction.
All right, well, the good news is I'm not running for anything, and I'm not going to allow any additional political dialogue in these chambers. So now that hold on, now that we all got it out of our system, my tolerance for this after tonight is going to be 0. I don't want politics in this room. I'm not going to let it get in this room. In the 4 years I've chaired this meeting, I've allowed for it maybe once or twice when somebody was going in a back and forth and felt the need to defend themselves, okay? But since I'm finishing up these last 3 months, I have a right to make certain it don't happen. So there will be no more political back and forth. I respect Mr. Bowen, he's a wonderful person. I respect Mr. Walsh, he's a wonderful person. Let me say this, being the mayor is a wonderful institution, and one of the two of you will be institutionalized come January 1st. So we're moving on to the next person. Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Have a good night. Mr. Boyce, welcome, sir. Good to see you again. Come on up. Hello, Mr. Boyce. Good to see you again.
How you doing?
In regards to an issue that was discussed last month in reference to the noise, I understand the township doesn't actually have an ordinance.
Would you, Mr. Boyce, just pull the mic a little closer to you? There you go. Thank you. And you are just...
I am George Boyce from 57 Adelphia Road.
Thank you, Mr. Boyce.
I'm back here again tonight after last month's meeting in reference to a noise ordinance. I understand the township does not actually have a noise ordinance. Now, I do have a paper here from January 19th of '07, the Howell Times, where they had a problem with noise out on Ford Road. And in the interim of that, there was an ordinance put in place. And I quote, "In a manner which to create loud, unnecessary, or unusual noise so as to disturb or interfere with peace and quiet of other persons." And that's the end of the quote, and that was quoted from Mr. Krupnik. So why, if we call up and to complain about a noise issue, we're told there's nothing they can do about it?
Mrs. Schlegel, we don't have a noise ordinance?
Yeah, we do.
I'm under the impression that we do. All right, we're calling it up right now? Okay,
Right.
keep going, Mr. Boyce. She's
No,
looking up
that's
online.
that's my issue. If that could be worded in such to the residents of Northern Howell, it would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I'm under the impression that we do have a noise ordinance.
We have one for construction noise ordinance. I mean, I know that one my department always gives out during our pre-construction meetings, and I mean, I could tell you from memory exactly what the construction noise ordinance is, but...
Could I hear, please, Ms. Nuziano?
Actually, the, what's it say down here?
Yeah, it's got the...
Right. We do have a noise ordinance.
Okay.
Okay, and it does have it appears to have a noise level of 90% of the time L90 based on 1 hour period. Now, we did call out the county because we don't have the equipment to do that. So what we do is we call out the county health department. And the last time that there was a call that came in, we called out the county health department, and they went out and measured the noise level. And it did not exceed the decibel number that was allowed.
Okay.
So at which point do you consider whether it's a decimal level or the way it's worded by the township?
Read the whole ordinance.
The whole ordinance just says excessive noise is a serious hazard to the public health and welfare of and the quality of life. A substantial body of science and technology exists by which excessive noise may be substantially abated. The people have a right to and should be ensured an environment free from noise that may jeopardize their health or welfare or degrade the quality of life. The necessity and the public interest for the provisions and prohibitions hereinafter contained and enacted is declared as a matter of legislative determination and public policy, and the provisions and prohibitions hereinafter contained and enacted are in pursuance of and for the purpose of securing and promoting the public health, comfort, convenience, safety, and welfare, and the peace and quiet of the inhabitants of the Township of Howell. It is the policy of Howell Township to prevent noise which may jeopardize the health or welfare of its citizens or degrade the quality of life. And then they define what, ambient noise level is, weighted sound pressure level, those types of things, what continuous noise is. It goes on to define different types of noise.
So this paper's incorrect.
Well, I'm reading from the actual law.
Can I let you have this article?
A newspaper's never printed anything that wasn't true, sir.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get at. I mean, here it is in black and white, what I read, and what is the difference between here and what actual ordinance is.
Yeah, we got to give you the right amount of clarity, and you're entitled to ask those questions.
Because when I call in and I'm told nothing we can do about it, then something here isn't on the same page.
Well, I would like to also see maybe if possible, if it's the wish of the council, to have the ordinance review committee look at our ordinance, match it up against some other ordinance for some other towns, see if we can tighten it up a little bit more and benefit the residents of Howell. I mean, that's the wishes of the governing body. I'd like to see that happen.
I think it's a good idea.
Right now, our ordinance turns over the noise to the health department.
Okay.
Okay, it goes on. I mean, it's extensive. That was just the body of it, but it goes on to say about times. It goes on to say that they're the ones that, who were measuring it. There's, okay, so that's what happens.
You have a comment, Mrs. Dalton?
I do, and it goes back to our discussion on the outdoor gathering ordinance, and I know that we had discussed coming up with some proposals. It seems to me that the most prevalent comment or concern that I'm hearing from the public is with respect to noise issues. I realize there may be some overcrowding and entrance egress issues, but I think maybe this needs to be looked at, in terms of, I don't want to see us over-regulate. I'm very worried about the outdoor gathering ordinance, the concept of it. But perhaps Mr. Walsh is correct, or we should look at the Ordinance Review Committee, just looking at the whole idea of gathering issues and the noise ordinance. And that's also a volunteer board. It is also a free service to us, so that we don't have to continue to pay attorneys to draft something until we get a general policy sense of what it is we want to do, and then have the professionals draft. This would be the second round of drafting something, and I'm not sure that I got a sense that we had a real sense of direction when we had the conversation. And Mr. Boyce's point about the noise ordinance makes a lot of sense to me, and I think that we should ask for the Ordinance Review Committee to look at the general concept.
So then why don't we do two things, I think, which sort of updates what we talked about earlier. Before your office goes a lot further, let's take the outdoor ordinance and this noise ordinance and send it to Ordinance Review, have them look at it on a priority basis. And I think we owe it to Mr. Boyce to get him a copy tomorrow, or however quickly he can come here and pick it up, copy of that ordinance that you just read. It's available on the internet.
Right.
Let's just make it easier for him. We'll produce a copy of that so you can see, Mr. Boyce, specifically what is on the books today, so you're comfortable with what we currently have from a regulatory perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Where can I pick that up?
You can pick that up in the clerk's office first thing tomorrow morning.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Boyce. Good to see you.
Thank you for your time.
Anytime. Thank you. Marcy Nowicki, Miss Nowicki. Okay, she's gone. And I believe Mayor Konopka has also left. Mr. Konopka, he is. He spoke earlier. Mr. Curry, he's still up there. He is. Mr. Curry, welcome. Come on up.
Warren Curry, Georgia Tavern Road. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Mr. Curry.
I'll only take a couple of minutes. Nice to see John Bennett here, who's been a friend of Howell for many years. With regard to the cabana gazebo ordinance or I guess it's 7A5. Has to do with the cabanas and gazebos, and also 7A6 on the outdoor gathering permits. I'm very happy to hear Mrs. Dalton's view on it, because she kind of sings my song on this. Over-regulating is something we should be very careful of. And both of them speak to a possible intrusion into the lives of people, just trying to live their lives and enjoy the so-called country atmosphere that we all try to preserve in Howell. So I'm very happy to hear your point of view on that. I hope the rest of the council feels the same way. I spoke about this the last time it was brought up, and my opinion is live and let live. Just throw the both of them out. But I guess you have to go on with it. I didn't see any ordinances. I suppose you haven't gone that far with it. You have no ordinances developed. Correct. And you're going to look into it. When could we, is there any indication when this would crop up again, so that I don't miss that meeting?
On the gathering ordinance? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, both of them, yeah.
On the gazebo issue, thankfully, that's not going any further.
That's dead.
That's dead completely.
Happy to hear that. And the outdoor gathering permits.
On the gathering permit, what we're going to do is send it to the Ordinance Review Committee, get their input and recommendations. It'll then go to the manager, and her office, in conjunction with council, will take a look at it.
Yeah.
Come back here for
Mr. Curry, that's going to take some time. The Ordinance Review Committee, I believe, meets once a month. So they would just be getting it, then probably the next, you know what I mean? Then the next meeting, they would be looking at it,
Couple
and then...
meetings away.
So, yeah, we're talking a couple months away.
Yeah, I would like to be here whenever that pops up again, you know. I want to ride it till it dies. Wow! At any rate, yeah, you certainly know my opinion on it, and keep up the good work. I hope you either do away with it completely or just keep it out of our faces. We have enough government in our faces already. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Curry. Mr. Smith, welcome. Come on up.
Don Smith, 54 Vanderveer Road, Howell. I was going to pass on this because Mr. Walsh agreed to a meeting with the trustees of the Historical Society, which I think is the proper way to handle the original complaint that arose at the last meeting. However, a couple comments were made tonight, and the press has had some things that I'd just like to clarify, unrelated to the political aspect of the society. For one thing, the township does not fund the Historical Society. Last year, you did in fact give a $500 donation, and you did provide the postage for the newsletter. I just want to go over a couple quick figures, and it's going to take less than the 5 minutes, but we had 29 third grade tours provided between April 22nd and June 19th. The Board of Ed canceled 4 of those tours, June 9th and 10th, due to closing the schools for the high heat. There were 783 students, teachers, and parents participating in those tours. This does not include the tours of the schoolhouse and the museum on Howell Day, Monmouth County Historic Tour Weekend, which was started this past year, or any regularly scheduled open house days, nor does it reflect the traveling trunk program, which one of the trustees, where she takes the owls and does a whole talk on owls native to Howell Township to the 5th grade classes in Howell Township. All volunteer work, nobody's reimbursed for gas or anything else. Our 2007 financial figures, we brought in a total of $3,093.95. That includes the $500 donation that the township graciously made. Real big bucks operation, as you can see. We spent $3,723.92, leaving us with a deficit of $629.97, which we hope to make up on sales at Howell Day. And we'll be looking for you again, Mr. Walsh, to buy canned goods.
As long as you got some good
So I hope we can settle that issue.
No.
Our largest expenditure is heating of the schoolhouse. We have to maintain a temperature, a minimum temperature of 55 degrees to preserve the building and prevent mold formation. If we were to develop mold in that building, we could no longer open it to school children. That's pretty easy to understand. That cost us last year $1,866 alone, just to heat that building. And with increasing costs, I'm sure it's going to be more this year. The newsletters, there was some comment about the newsletters, and no more than 75 of the newsletters are mailed. Yours are put into your boxes here in the township rather than being mailed, and there's a few others that are handed out. That comes to 900 mailings a year, or the postage would come to $378 a year for the 12 months. And we do provide the paper and the envelopes, and the editor does the actual copying. So I just want to point out that we are not totally funded by the township. We're very pleased that you have given us the postage, the use of the postage, because it does help offset our costs for these tours. And the $500, which, Mr. Walsh, you were very kind in reinstituting to the Historical Society. We'd gone for a number of years without any donation. So I just wanted to clear that up. And I know you were instituting an investigation from the manager's office, and I would just like to give Helene the card of the editor if she wants to get in contact with her. She had sole responsibility for that newsletter. She can be reached where she works at the Cathedral Church of St. John the Divine as Director of Christian Education. So I'll just leave you her business card. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Smith. Mrs. Smith, welcome. Come on up.
Thank you.
Pauline Smith, 54 Vanderveer Road. I could say a lot more. I'll only take 30 seconds on that subject. And I'll adamantly insist that we do not do anything politically. We are not permitted to by our incorporation, our charter. So we would not, won't, and we wouldn't do anything against any of you anyway. Even though sometimes, Mr. Howell, I could strangle you. There is more.
I never heard that before.
I sit there, and I'm going to take 30 seconds to tell you. You are so diligent about businesses. I think you forget that the only reasons businesses are needed is to support the people. And if getting those businesses in destroy the lifestyle, the property, and the well-being of the people, why on earth do you fight so hard for them? And I really think it's a misconception that Howell Township is the hardest on businesses. You go a little north of us to Colts Neck, where I come from, and where we still have, I still have a lot of friends and relatives. They're a lot harder on them than we are. But I'd like to take, really, what I'd like to say, although I didn't mean to say it quite that harshly, is ask you to remember that when it comes to things like the hotel, when it comes to things that are such an impact that can't be mitigated on existing residents, they shouldn't even be considered. I think some of you are too business-oriented. And remember that you're supposed to be there to take care of the people. And I have a couple of comments or thoughts about and questions about, and I share the apprehension and fear. I'm glad to hear that the one ordinance is being set aside, but the gatherings. What's life all about? Now, I understand and was raised very strictly to respect other people and their property, and would not impact on them. My neighbors don't even know, unless they were invited, to the large gatherings we have at our house. We have, as I said, we both come from big families. We have a lot of friends. We have people who come from other states, between Don having been in the Coast Guard and our association with different car clubs over the country and over the last years, where we've made lasting friends, that we have people who come and camp in our backyard and hook up their campers to our garage to visit. We don't bother anybody. We don't impact anybody. We have had weddings, wedding receptions, and unfortunately way too many funerals. We have family reunions, ours and other people's. As a matter of fact, former council member Barry Siegel has asked that when he and his lady friend finally tie the knot, that they do so in our gazebo in our yard and have the reception there. And I'm concerned that somebody is going to come, never having had a complaint, and sometimes we have alcohol, sometimes we don't, never gotten out of hand. Is somebody from Howell Township going to come in the middle of 100 people having a nice time and say, you have to stop this because you don't have a permit?
Does Barry Siegel know he's getting married yet?
He's been talking about it for years. He's been engaged for a long time, and every year, for the last 3 years, they've said, we still mean it. Can we use the gazebo? Can we use your yard? I just hope they invite us.
You're paying for it.
No, we're not paying for it. I'll help. I always cook and I always help.
5 minutes?
I didn't get an answer. I told you my concern. I mean, I want your thoughts on such a thing. Would the gatherings that I'm talking about be affected?
I think the answer is, Mrs. Smith, we don't know, because we've dispatched other departments in the community, volunteer groups, to take a look at it. And so before anything gets passed, it's going to be thoroughly vetted so that all of these issues are taken into consideration. We share in your concern. Your comments are on the record. We agree with you. Nobody wants to overregulate. The 5 of us have all said that, and we're going to be judicious and thoughtful about whatever gets put into place. We have a responsibility to protect the people who have experienced some difficulties. We need to do so in a way that does not intrude on someone's lifestyle.
And hurt other people.
So we got to find a way to split the baby, and that's what we're going to do.
Well, one thing I would suggest the main thing you look at is the safety. I know of situations where roads have been blocked. Nobody should park on the road. If you don't have the space to provide parking, unfortunately, you can't have such a thing. You can't have a function. So I think that should be, even if you start there first and have an ordinance that says that, I think it's a beginning, it's a basis, and it can be added to later. Instead of, if I could suggest, and it's not a criticism, but instead of waiting and not doing anything, it doesn't do something that you know could hurt someone. Because the protection of as far as safety goes, blocking roads in people's driveways should be prohibited under some law anyway.
Mayor, that's been 5 minutes.
And if it was, And if it was classified under gatherings, I think it would be a step in the right direction.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Smith.
Just one very quick comment. You know how I felt and feel. The accusations of being political. Mistakes happen, and we all have to understand that. They happen every day. I don't know how often I hear mechanical malfunction, human error.
We hear you. It was a mistake.
We all have to accept that.
We're good. Have a
Okay.
good night. Thank you. Evelyn Barrow, Mrs. Barrow, or Ms. Barrow. You still here? You're going to pass, Ms. Barrow. Okay, we'll see you next time. Lynn Gillette. Miss Gillette, are you here? Welcome, Miss Gillette. Come on up. What's that?
This is killing me.
Hello, Miss Gillette.
Hello.
Just give us your name and address for the record, please. Pull that as close as you can to yourself.
Okay, I go by Lynn, but technically it's Evelyn. Evelyn Gillette, 68 Easy Street. And I just want to, I'm also from the Historical Society, but what she said. I wanted to go on some other points of the ordinances that you had before. On the outdoor gathering permits, like I said, what Pauline said.
Good.
Okay. On vacating the Northwoods Route 9 right turn ramp, I'm also not in favor. I agree with the other gentleman. That would set a poor precedent. On the kitchenettes and the cabanas and gazebos, all of that, the outbuildings, the structures, 7A2, 7A5, 7A8. I also agree those are unnecessary regulation that, you know, I think we can regulate well enough with what ordinances we already have on the books. I also wanted to touch on the noise problems that some of the other people had talked about, and I can understand the noise problems with or without a buffer, and I can see both sides of the picture. I like my neighbors, but sometimes they're too loud. I'm a quarter mile from the soccer fields over on Bear Swamp Tract, but I can hear them even with the trees, so maybe we could check the decibels over there too, on the voice boxes of the kids over there. So we all have to deal with noise in our lives, you know, and sometimes it's annoying, but it's not really decibels that are harmful, and you just, because you like your neighbors, you grin and bear it and say, okay, well, they won't be doing that tomorrow, hopefully. So I just wanted to sympathize with both sides on that. And that's about all. Just put my 2 cents in. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Magid, Abraham Magid. Come on up, sir. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
He's passing. He's passing.
Hang on, I'm getting a drink before you get there.
Such a pleasure indeed to see fine people, and I mean that.
Just give us, as always, your name and address, please, Mr. Magid, when you get
certainly
settled.
will.
Great, thank you.
For 83 years, it's been Abe Magid. And for over 40 years, I've lived in Monmouth County, and for 14 years, I've lived now at 89 Mariners Cove. And I might say that I heard today from our very illustrious manager, Helene Schlegel, that we're ranked 77th as the best place to live in the United States. To which I immediately responded to her, it should be number 1. To which I think she said something, and I said something to the effect that she said something like, well, others will come to me and say, why is it number 1? And I said, because we have such a fine staff here. I spoke with Bruce Davis last week on the item I'm going to talk about now, and I spoke with Helene Slagle. Well, let me get to the point, and rather quickly. The hour is late. My wife might or might not be asleep, but I should be home before I turn into a mouse and a pumpkin. I'm sure the rest of you feel the same way. I'm here tonight to say that monstrous word, COA. And I know we're all on the same page on this. Since I read what, about a month or so ago, you said, Mr. Mayor, and I've read in fact, the Board of Adjustment with tussling with the problem. Bottom line, it is not enough, and I realize your dilemma. It was explained to me. There is a thing called a builder's remedy law, so that if somebody somehow finds some way to shove a township off of COA, which apparently they could, for whatever whimsical reason they might decide to, then we're wide open to what's called the builder's remedy law, and in pours Niagara Falls to drown us, toot sweet. Not maybe as fast as a nuclear bomb by a terrorist, but in time, it will take place. I also know there are organizations, I was provided with one, I checked others now, there's this New Jersey State League of Municipalities. Now, why am I saying this? Why am I here tonight? Because I'll tell you why. My computer says there are 566 townships, municipalities, boroughs, and cities. And I have the names of all of them. And I have the names of the computer does it for me. 21 counties. I also might add that over the weekend, I attended a wonderful birthday for a lady that my wife has known for many, many years. She's 96 years old. Not my wife, the lady. She calls her Aunt Mary, even though she's not an aunt, because she grew up with her. But the reason I'm saying that is, this is in the North Jersey area, Franklin Lakes and Wyckoff and so on. They will not be hurt by COA because, one, there's no land to build, fabulous countryside. I toured quite a bit. I went to a musical recital at one of the wonderful churches up there. It's a great area. A lot of fine houses. Developers are not going to go there. There's no place to build. Where will they come? Yeah, betcha they'll come to Central Jersey. They'll come to Middlesex, Monmouth, Ocean, probably Burlington, places that are so accessible for either New York City or Philadelphia, and plenty of space to build. Now, let me get to the cut to the cheese, bottom line. Every township, what did somebody said, Franklin said, divided, we all hang, unless we all hang together. I was just told that, I'm not that academic. I was told by somebody very erudite tonight. Let me tell you what I'm going to do. And not defensively, as time provides me, but I'll move with 7 league boots, even though I do a lot of volunteer work now.
Mayor, that's been 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
5 minutes. All right, wrap it up, Mr. Magid.
All right. Stand back for the rap. As best I can, at maybe more than twice your age, I have quite a Kazatska time with my doctors. They tell me how little time I have. I tell them they're dead wrong because I know I'm right. Dead wrong.
Well, they're right about one thing. You have little time right now.
No. I have little time that I'm used if you don't play funny with me. I thought you're on my side.
You've had 3 minutes worth of pauses, Abe. Come on.
These are the only pauses I know, if you know what I mean. and you probably do. What I'm doing is, I'm going to form a coalition, because while every township like Howell, because of the legal problems, has to lay down and cry on their knees by the end of the year that maybe instead of 5 units and then an affordable house unit, which is certainly the kiss of death, or even 10, yes, each township separately will die, because you'll all be afraid to take an action individually. You have to. It was explained to me why. But if, let's say, 300 of those 566, ruling out the northern ones maybe, can be unified together and see that what started out as a tiny little seed, as we all started life, from the Mount Laurel decision, which has grown into a monster, I want to tell you this. You have here a guy named Dave Maggott, and he is going to undertake this. And I will be in touch with this township, with a formed organization for other townships, and I say to you, you will not have to play, please beg on my knees, I'll see what I can do by November or October.
Sounds like a plan.
It's more than a plan.
All right, well, we will...
It's an implementation to keep us, the taxpayers, there's no longer a sword of Damocles, from being guillotined.
Thank you, Mr. Maggott.
And anything you can do in that respect, I call on you to think about it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Juan and Joyce Marafo. Mr. and Mrs. Marafo, welcome. Come on up.
God bless you, Abe. I missed you.
You made up for it all.
I did. I missed him.
Ditto.
I'm being sincere.
Mega ditto, because Russell and
I'm going to stop by
Hello, it's Juan and Joyce Marufo,
I apologize. Marufo.
the Adderman Ranch.
My apologies.
First thing I want to touch on is the buffer zone. 6 years ago, with Mr. Verdoni and Vinnie Totino, we walked that buffer zone and saw the markers, and there were dead trees. And Mr. Verdoni said, take those trees down. We've been maintaining that buffer zone for him for 6 years. Now, with the rodeos and the noise, all of a sudden, everyone's pecking, looking for stuff, all right? My noise has not been a problem. You've sent the Board of Health out there. The decimal readers have been okay. The township has been unable to come up with a decimal reader. I purchased my own. My security does decimal readings and documents them every half an hour. They have the ordinances from Monmouth County. We've been within normal limits. Still, phone calls are made, police come, my customers are intimidated to come, my quality of life has gone down, my business has suffered. We've been slandered, being told that we're selling alcohol when there has been no proof of this. It has been on cable TV, televised, God knows where, okay? The other thing is that Mr. Verdoni has been having, and Chris Jackson's out there now working on it, he's been storing roll-offs, commercial roll-offs on his residential property, and he has a chicken coop there without a CO, which he's been leasing out to a plumber who's been storing his equipment. Okay? So there's multiple things here. The other thing is, a roll-off is a big dumpster that they bring in, and sometimes they come with stuff in it from other areas where they will sit all weekend until they're transported to a dump or something, wherever they need to take it. It's his business. It's his son's business. But Verdoni's property is residential, and they should not be parked there. He's been cited for that. Okay? The other thing is that our rodeos, it's an American tradition. We do it all over the country. He's going down to Virginia this weekend to do one. Never have a problem anywhere doing it, okay? We have nothing but children and families. And I don't want to deny children and families access to family outdoor activities. We don't block traffic. The only time traffic was blocked, the last rodeo we had, is when the police sit there and run license plates on everyone coming down the road, looking to see them come into my property, and they pull them over right in front of my driveway, and I can't get people in. They can go to Walmart and do the same thing and bust people, but they choose to do it in front of my property. I filmed them. We've never had fights there, nothing, nothing. There's never been any off-site parking without permission from the neighbors. Never. There was never have we imposed on anybody without approaching them first. Okay? Now, I don't know what they expect me to grow or what they think in their little mind what agriculture is, but if I could plant a money tree on there, I would. But I have to do different aspects to survive in this market. And rodeo or whatever I have to do, I have the right to do it on a farm. I'm farm assessed. The Ag Board has been out to my property and has seen my rodeo, and they accept it under the right to farm as is. As is.
Well, you know, the rodeos is a heritage, American heritage for years, and I have a lot for families over there to do it for all over rodeos, and I do it very good for the families over there. Two people protesting all the time, is calling his other friends and all that. But I have there a lot of people passing fun, diversion, go to ride horses, take lessons, and all the kind of activities. I have security, I have insurance. It's not my first time I do rodeos. I do for all my life. I have also here in Howell, I started the rodeos in 1994. Here, the first rodeo I do in Maxim Road. And from there, I have this farm for 6 years. And I do 6 years a year if the weather is good. Now, I have another restaurants pull in the corner of my property. It pull bands. The people never protesting for that, only for my rodeos. I have in the other corner the school. The school do all the time football, soccer, football, American, bands, every kind of activities. I think he doing more than 6 to me. And I only do 6 if the weather is good.
I can hear the school from my house. And they don't have enough parking. People are parking on the roads to attend football games where the police have to do traffic. I should take my decimal meter and start trotting around town and decimaling everybody else and see what it feels like.
Mayor, that's been 5 minutes.
It was a good 5 minutes.
All right, well, we appreciate your comments.
I want to, please.
Thank you very much.
Consider
I'd like to know when the next rodeo is.
Depending to the weather, I can tell you 2 weeks before I do it.
I like to see it.
No problem.
Do you have one scheduled?
Welcome
anytime soon?
everybody.
No.
It's open for the pool.
So you do 6 a year. How many have you done so far this year?
If the weather is good, so far normally when I stop in October because the weather is cold. I cannot do it no more.
We stopped doing
once a month I do it.
Because people were complaining. So that's business down the tube.
So, but how many?
Accommodate everybody.
So how many
far I do
rodeos have
already
you?
5.
You've done 5 this year.
Yes, sir.
And there's likely you'll do one more.
October, probably I go do the other one, and I say because it's cool the weather. I don't have indoor ring, big one. It's why.
Okay.
You know.
The
Thank
other
you.
thing is, he's been maintaining that buffer zone for 6 years for Verdoni. Now
Before,
he's
I don't have no
more,
complaints
now it's
about
getting all
that.
trashed.
Okay.
He used to pick up the garbage on the street.
The
for
trees
Verdoni.
fall down in my trailer. I fix my trailer, and I never complain about that. That tree is dead and fall in my trailer. Whole
I'm
trailer.
not judgment, so I'm going to stop by tomorrow.
It's like, come on,
My
guys.
house is old. It's built like a piece of crap.
All right. Thank you for your comments, folks. Have a good night.
It's an old country bungalow. I think somebody else lives in one of them.
I might mispronounce the last name of this next person. I apologize. Barbara Barbado. Barbara Barbado.
It's 20 minutes to 12.
Did I get it right? Okay. Welcome, Mrs. Barbado. Barbato. Okay. Okay. Good evening. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Barbara Barbado from 21 Woodland Drive. several things. It is late, and I'm going to reiterate, but it's my right.
Of course.
Number one, I just want to thank the board and the staff, because you do sacrifice. I don't know how your families do it. I don't know how you do it, and I do thank you.
We appreciate your
No
comments. Thank you.
politics. I have a question, and I don't know if it's appropriate here, or just refer me to where to go. On Holstis Road in Georgia Tavern is that brown building across from Stewart's. That just
Clock
gets,
tower.
is there a plan for that property, or even to take it down? Is it ever under discussion, because you see it deteriorating year by year?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's privately owned. We have inquired many times over the years. It continues to deteriorate. Unfortunately, the building is still structurally sound, so we can't enforce anything with respect to its demolition. We're not aware of the property owner's current intentions. It is a vacant building. It's been that way for some while, and we don't, unfortunately, have the police authority to sort of clean up ugly buildings. We would like to, but as best I know, Mrs. Schlegel, you can correct us,
That's
or Governor
correct.
Bennett, we don't really have any enforcement
And
authority.
we also had checked, hoping that maybe the taxes weren't paid, and, but that's not the case, right?
The bizarre thing is, the taxes are paid on a building that's been empty for 15 years. It's not used. Maybe they're saving it for some rainy day investment.
Okay.
It is unfortunate.
I
We
wasn't
agree
sure if it
with
was
you.
unsafe. I didn't know if kids were finding access to it, things like that. Okay.
We wish we could do something about it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. One of my favorite topics. In regards to 7A.4, the NJ DOT access application, impending resolutions to authorize preliminary approval for water and sanitary sewer services, 9B11 and 9B12. That's for the proposed hotel. I see this, some places have the shield go down. It's an ouch subject. I go back to '06 when so much of this came to surface, between the Chamber of Commerce letter in the newspaper, Jack Klubnik's editorial, even comments from the board because we're discussing the ordinance. It really came to light that that was site selection, and this hotel issue has been around longer than we ever knew. We're beseeching the council to go and look at this site, and for once and for all, irregardless of the ordinance, just take a look and common sense say, we've got to start changing the mindset about that site in particular. Let's see. There are so many things. Irregardless of what the DOT determines on that access, you need to consider, I think it's put as Block 59, Lot 51, Route 9. So now all the sidewalk issues you were talking about, you have there. I think in the original site plan, they weren't even considering sidewalks. You're talking a place that's going to bring in service people who will use bus access. So we have so many, that's a side traffic. Just the police have discouraged that site. The Environmental Commission has major concerns. So again, I would love the board to take a look at this and once and for all, hopefully change the thinking. And let's see. I even want to go back to 1988. There was a site plan for that property. And the zoning board made comments even way back then. They said it's such a unique property. The desirability of it changed dramatically when 195 was put in. It's in a poor area in terms of access to Route 9. It has the wetlands. They were concerned about big development in there because if there was ever a woodland fire, it was hazardous. Even back in 1988, they were concerned about the traffic congestion. And back then, it was just kind of said as an off comment, but I'm hoping to put it in your heads, that maybe this needs to be considered as open space. And just somehow, I know this poor gentleman has invested so much money and so much time in this piece, but it really has to come. It is like one of the busiest areas in Howell. Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you very much. The next person is Nick Astlinger. He's left, okay. And Mrs. Sue Weitgruber. Mrs. Weitgruber, welcome. Yes, she's last.
You done yet, Sue?
I
promise I'll keep it, I know it's late, I'll keep it very brief. I was going to talk, Suzanne Weingruber, 25 Princeton Drive.
Welcome, Mrs. Weingruber.
At all about the hotel, but just let me give you a general statement about Route 9. When Route 9 was dualized, and this pertains to both the Northwood site and the site on Salem Hill and Route 9, anybody whose property was taken was compensated, as you are, under condemnation. But those that were landlocked and rendered unusable got a lot more money. So remember that. All those properties have been compensated. You don't get two bites of the apple. Very briefly, I just wanted to mention about the outdoor gathering. Cherry Hill is a very different stripe. It's more like Rutherford or many of the communities in Bergen County. It does not even look anything like Howell Township. And I know the ordinance came from Cherry Hill last time. I have a concern because, and I think I wrote like 2 or 3 pages of comments on it last time when it was pulled, because quite frankly, I've had 2 engagement parties in my backyard that had over 100 people. My neighbor in back of me had his daughter's wedding. He had 100 people complete with DJ. You know what? We all get along in our neighborhood, so it's not a problem. There is a peace and good order ordinance on the books of Howell Township, which is very broad. Most municipalities have it, and it's used sometimes as a tool in municipal court to plead down to various things that would otherwise might carry, you know, what we used to call a misdemeanor. There are Title 39, there are traffic statutes, so there's all kinds of municipal and state regulations. I don't know that we need anything more in the books other than to use some of what we have. I don't think you need to start regulating whether people have trans fats in their cupboards. And I'm really afraid I'm going to open up that someday, and I'm going to see that on the agenda, because we've just regulated much too much in Howell Township.
Is it on next week's?
Yeah. Along with that, you can't eat red meat or golf on Tuesdays.
Watch it now.
I knew that would get your attention. I hope that the outdoor ordinance goes away. My neighbor who has a cabana, who paid for a permit, has electric and a bar and a TV in it. No running water, no bathroom. Just had his end of the season turkey fry, which he invites the whole neighborhood, as well as all his friends, and there were over 100 people there. You know, we all have a good time. We don't need to start posting security and all kinds of other things. I just briefly also wanted to mention about public records. I would I know that there is an ongoing request for open public records, not from me, from someone else, for well over 100 pages. In fact, it's probably a couple hundred pages of executive session minutes, which I understand are having to be redacted. What the state law says, if you're going to charge someone, you must adopt an ordinance for redaction. However, what I saw on the website wasn't that specific. In fact, it was very ambiguous that I expressed some concerns to some of the council members, because it talks about a charge for retrieval. Well, retrieval could be out of a file cabinet. I sincerely hope you're not going to introduce what was on the website, because it's extremely ambiguous. I think the township needs to stay transparent. I've made open public requests, you know, in the past, and, you know, yeah, okay, sometimes they're annoying, you know, any open public request, but it's the law. It is the law. We are allowed to come and see government records. You're allowed to look at them. What you're going to introduce, if it's what's on the website, truly is much too ambiguous and could be misused. The state statute, if you don't adopt one, says 75 cents for the first 10 pages, 50 cents for the next 10 pages, and 25 for every page thereafter. Okay? What you need to adopt ordinances for, and you may remember this, is when you want to charge for DVDs. That's what you have to. No, I guarantee you, nobody from the state called up Howell Township and said, hey, you got to adopt an ordinance. So before you go introducing what was on the website, I would really ask you to look at it, because I looked at it and I think there's a potential. You're not going to be sitting here. You might have different people in the future, and there's just going to be a potential that you're going to wind up in court like Lenape Regional did. Okay? And Lenape Regional is the benchmark on what you can say yes and no to. So please consider that. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks for your comments, Mrs. Weingruber. That's going to close the public portion. Mrs. Schlegel, is there any other business with the council to deliberate on this evening?
No, sir.
Okay, just by way of, do you have something?
I've just a couple things to follow up, because I'm not going to be here next meeting. Just because I don't want to interrupt on public comment.
Please.
Couple things that were brought to our attention tonight. The schoolhouse that is operated by the Historical Society Is that owned by the Historical Society, or is that township property?
The schoolhouse?
Yeah.
The schoolhouse is on township property. It is owned by the Historical Society.
But the building is owned by the Historical Society, but it's on, okay, because I wondered if it was township property, why weren't we paying for the heat? That would be a sensible thing. That's one thing I wanted to know. Number two, I would like, Barbara Barbados brought up a good point. I would like to know on her comment, in 1988, you said there was another proposal for that property. Was it an application that was brought before the planning board or the zoning board? Zoning board.
It was residential back there, and they wanted business.
Okay.
3 office complexes and 3 professional buildings.
Okay. And, let's see, I don't want to interrupt anybody else. One more thing. Is there any way to find out who the property owner was when that would have been when Sue made a comment on the property, when 195 went through? Who was the owner of that block, so that I could find out if that property was compensated because it was landlocked?
Go right online to the tax records, county tax.
Right, it'll show who owned it.
I believe it was Mr. Solans, because Mr. Solans was the prior owner of the Route 9 and Salem Hill property, and he was the one who was compensated. Dr. Cornmeal then bought it from him, knowing that it was landlocked.
Oh, happy days.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Showmaker?
No, I think that's it. Thank you.
All right, so for the benefit of the public, we have a public participation meeting a week from this evening, Tuesday, September the 16th. That's a 7:30 start time. There is no executive session that evening. That is an open public meeting. Our next regular meeting is Tuesday, September 23rd. We have executive session at 6:30, and we begin our regular at 7:30. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen.